Hey, this is Pete from Endoxa Booking and Conduit, and I'll see you at the Tampa Morgue.
What's up? This is Tony, and you're listening to the Tampa Morgue, episode number 45. And as always, I am joined by my Maryland Death Fest bound co-host, Mr. Ed Webb. What's up, dude?
Mr. Anderson, what's going on, brother?
Nothing much, man. How you doing? You getting ready for your trip this week?
I am.
Not you guys really, are playing Friday night. You guys play.
Yep.
Friday.
Power stage.
Yep, and we are joined today, or whatever you're listening, by someone that me and Ed have known for a long time. I think I've known this guy for over 25 years now, and I don't even know how long Ed's known him. He does a lot of things in the Tampa Bay scene. He's been around for a long time, played in bands in Tampa. Obviously, he books the majority of the metal shows now, it seems, in Tampa and Orlando. We are joined by Pete Olen. What's up, dude?
Hey, man, how you guys doing?
How are you doing, man? Long time no see, as we were saying when we were all signing on.
Oh, it's good, man. Just really busy with the venue and shows on top of shows on top of shows.
You seem like you're fucking having you've been ruling it, man, it's been a long time now, which we'll get to. I know you started booking a long time ago.
What's crazy right now, though, and it's funny that we're recording this, is that, and I have nothing to do with this, but we had mentioned right before we came on, Ed was talking about being at the Amon Amarth's Cannibal Corpse show. And it's just like one thing I think, not to drag this off course already, but like one thing
that's fine.
I think is amazing that people haven't talked about enough is like that's got to be the largest death metal tour that's ever been done in the U.S. And seeing people like Cannibal and Obituary playing Red Rocks is insane.
We talked about that last week.
Everyone deserves a shitload of credit for that because it's just wild that it's gotten to that point now.
And it was packed. It wasn't like an empty, like people who don't know, it's the old Sundome, which is a little, it's probably maybe a quarter the size smaller than the Ice Palace or the Forum or whatever you want to call it now. But it like, even for Frozen Soul, when they opened up, the response was loud. Like there were people there at 6:30 to watch a band on a Saturday night, which a death metal band, you know what I mean? It's like, it's unheard of, because I know a lot of times we go to regular shows. I mean, I've gone to shows at the amphitheater and nobody's there for the opening band. You know what I mean? It's like empty. And to see that many people there for that, yeah, it was cool. And it was good to see a lot of faces that I haven't seen in a long time.
And how big does, Obituary, I mean, it's just crazy that how big this band is getting. I feel like personally, I mean, we've all been around since forever with that band. And just, I don't know, they just pick up steam every year. It just seems to be more and more and more and more. What, they toured with Black Label a few years ago. And, I mean, the Red Rock thing was crazy. I mean, just seeing that, was just
Well, they toured with Slayer in Europe. So, I mean, they've got to do some, big tours, but usually it's overseas because the U.S. doesn't give a shit. Seems that way anyway. You know what I mean? It's like they don't give the respect to the bands like Europe does. When you play Europe, we're South America for that matter. It's a different respect.
Now, Pete, we're going to talk about your background and all that stuff, but really, you've dealt with Obituary. Like, are they one of the easiest bands to deal with, you think?
Yeah, they're pretty self-contained. Those guys are very nice and easy so's Cannibal, so's Frozen Soul. Even Frozen Soul is like a young band. Those guys are super chill. They're great to work with. Chad sits there and plays Magic half the time. It's good. But no, I don't think, it's funny because you did so much booking back in the day too at Venom and with your own bands. I think that it's not completely gone. There's still bad days, but it's not as, I would say the industry's calmed down a little bit since maybe before COVID. It used to be a lot more like yelling at tour managers and this and that. And it just doesn't really happen as much anymore. I'm not sure why, but it seems to have relaxed a little bit. So
do you think that COVID kind of like made the crowds bigger too? Because I noticed that it seems like the shows, everything I see, because I'm over here now, do they seem like they're more packed now because people actually realize what it was like to be stuck at home?
Yeah, I don't know why. I mean, I think maybe that's part of it. Hopefully people appreciate that we all get to do this more often, but I actually think that there's a lot of, I don't know what both of your experiences were during that, but I found way more people who dug up like old bands or bands they didn't know. So you saw, kind of paradoxically, you saw some bands, and like Cannibal Corpse is a good example, where they're obviously always popular, but they came out of the pandemic way more popular than they were beforehand. Like I used to do shows with them at the Orpheum, and now they're selling out Janus, and that was even before this stadium tour. So who knows how big they'll be kind of coming back off that.
I think the only thing I did.
I think Obituary got big too because they did those video shows, the online streaming shows, which got people to watch concerts when you couldn't. So they had a lot of people watching that. You know what I mean?
How did you guys feel about that? I don't know. The online concerts, I have to admit, man, I kind of didn't like it. Like at first, I knew it was going to be a thing. And you notice it pretty much ended. There's a few that still did it, but it pretty much was done right when COVID was over. The venue started opening up. Obituary, though, theirs were very successful. I mean, it just goes to show you again how this band is so relevant now. I mean, what did you think, Pete, of those online shows?
It's not my thing, but I think it pales in comparison to seeing bands live. But I also think it's a phenomenal thing, especially during COVID, for bands to make money, right? I mean, people like Obituary who have such a heavy touring cycle are like stuck. So it was really great that they could do well with that stuff.
A lot of those bands were actually giving that money to their staff too. The guys who were, there's a lot of bands I was hearing that, because the road workers who were basically like losing their asses during COVID. A lot of them were taking care of them and stuff too.
Yeah, I was really happy or fortunate at the time that I had another job because I didn't book shows for a year, maybe more than a year and a half almost. So if you were just a promoter, for example, it would have been, I don't know exactly what you would have done at that point, but yeah.
Did you notice like when it started happening, like I know X Hoarder had to cancel their tour. They were with Overkill and they canceled theirs like midway through or close to the end of it maybe. But do you remember when you sat there and was like, oh shit, man, like I can't even book bands now. Everything is just getting dropped.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things where it's easy to talk about afterwards, but at the time it was hard to, because it kept being like, oh, well, we're going to shut down for like 2 weeks. Oh, my March is ruined. This sucks. And then it was like, well, maybe by the end of 8, like it wasn't, you didn't know at the time that it was going to be this catastrophe of a year. It was just like, oh shit, the next 2 weeks are fucked up. We'll figure it out. And then suddenly it was just like everything. So.
Yeah, we're actually I want to go back a little bit because, like I said, we've known you forever. And actually we opened up the show with Constrictions of the Flesh. Was that off the 2002 demo?
Sure.
We're we're just talking about that, Ed, like remembering the years. It's always
I'm the worst with that. I couldn't. I think it's somewhere around there. We did a bunch of different EPs that were kind of around the same time, but I think that was one we did at Rutan's studio with when Sean Otani was working.
Yeah.
He was phenomenal. So we did a couple EPs with him at Rutan's place when it was off Skipper. It's a long time ago, but yeah.
Yeah, so that was 2002. Then I think when Evil Sean and all, that was about that time period. So I want to start out though. When you were a kid, you're born in Fort Pierce?
Yeah, I grew up in South Florida. Yeah.
And did you actually remember like when you first started getting into music at all? Not even like rock music, like as a kid, like whether it's one of those books that come with tapes in them or your parents' records or all that bullshit. Do you remember when you actually started like getting into music at all, or your first music that you actually remember hearing?
Yeah, I mean, I started off in this like kind of weird way where I was I had a friend. I think it's probably pretty normal for some people. I had a friend whose sister was super into punk music, like had a mohawk, Liberty Spikes and all that stuff. And so I started hearing like the Misfits and Black Flag and things like that. And then kind of really, it was kind of weird. So I got into that, and then like Metallica, Slayer, and like Nirvana, I think at the time. And then immediately went from that to Cannibal Corpse, Morbid Angel. So it's just, there were a handful of friends and I that, ended up playing music together and stuff, but kind of really quickly escalated. So I didn't have much of, like, my parents weren't into music or anything like that. So I kind of.
Do you remember the first record you actually purchased?
The first album I purchased?
Yeah, or received.
Oh God, it was probably like a Nirvana album or something, or I mean, we dubbed cassettes, right? So the first one I bought is different. I mean, I think someone probably dubbed me like Collection 1 from the Misfits, might have been one of the first cassettes. And Slayer, Divine Intervention, when it came out, I think was early on. So yeah, I kind of jumped quickly into the deep end.
Were you also an Ace? Did you ever go to Ace Records and stuff? We just actually did an episode last week of that talking about Aces and stuff.
We did go to Aces. First time we played the Brass Mug. The first time we played Tampa on like a Wednesday, we went to Aces, and his guys from South Florida in a rural town. It was mind blowing. We didn't really know outside of like New York or something that there were metal record stores, and there was like Wax Tree in Orlando and other stuff. But Aces was the first one I think we went to. So it was it was almost overwhelming, even though it was like a small shop. We didn't know what to do at that point, so it was pretty wild. So, but I don't. It's funny because it all kind of coincided. Like, 'cause this is so long ago. This is like 97, 98. We went to Aces. So because this is how long ago this was, to play the Brass Mug, because we were from South Florida, we had to mail Heather, the owner, like a packet, like a promo pack. And then we had to come play like a Wednesday to like try out, whatever, right? And there was, I think, probably 7 people there, something like that.
I remember those nights.
But I guess we got really lucky because that was the first night we ever played there. Out of the 7 people, Robin from Gruesome and everything was one of them. So I met her the first night, and then Brian Ridley, who was playing with Cancer Slug and was living at Richard's house and everything. And we were like, it was a fun experience, but we were young, and it was like, why would we come back here and play? Everyone talks about this. There's fucking no one here. What was the point of this? Blah, 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 you know. And then like 2 or 3 days later, Heather called me, and some band had dropped off some show that Saturday, and I think Robin and Ridley had told her we were good or something like that. And so she's like, oh, you should come back. And everyone in the band's like, why would we go back there? There was no one there. This is kind of stupid or whatever. And I'll never forget. So we decided to play, and we drove back, and I remember the Brass Mug parking lot was kind of packed. And I was like, oh, this is weird, but you know, it should be cool. I remember opening the front door of the Brass Mug when it was on Fletcher, and every death metal band I'd ever heard of was there. And it was this kind of mind-blowing experience of like, oh shit. And we also met, it's the first show we played with Swollen, which was like the pre-Paths of Possession setup when Bill was singing. So they still had like death metal and clean vocals a little, and it was crazy. But yeah, that was my introduction to Aces in Tampa, kind of in one weekend.
And what was the first show you actually attended? Do you remember? Like as a kid?
Yeah, and there was a band from Vero Beach, like just north of Fort Pierce, called Dark Angel Divine. It was like Typo Negative meets My Dying Bride kind of band. I think that was the first show I went to. There was we didn't really have clubs over there, but there was a small place called Zelmo's, which was like a bar/coffee shop, and they played there or whatever. So they were kind of on the East Coast. They, you know, for a certain period of time, they did really well and toured, and then the singer died of pneumonia like a couple years later. It was very weird. So it sucks too. They were starting to get a bit more interest, I think, from all over, and they changed their name to Dark AD at one point, and we're starting to tour heavily, but he just got sick and died. I don't know what happened. So.
And were you? So I don't even know. Actually, this is something I don't know. Did you ever play an instrument? Did you like start with a guitar or anything, or did you? Because I know you're a vocalist, obviously, but did you actually like start jamming on guitars or bass or anything as a kid?
Yeah, I took 6-7 years of guitar lessons and music theory in high school, and I had a couple of side projects I played guitar in, but never anything that like did anything live. I think played random house parties or something, but yeah, I just never, I don't know, never found my way into playing guitar for a band or anything.
And in '97, you guys formed Dark Faith. How did that all start?
I mean, we're just like kids in high school all listening to death metal. So it was, we were all in this, well, most of us were in the same grade. The drummer was a couple years younger, and we just started jamming and wrote really horrible demos, I'm sure, that don't exist anymore. And yeah, I mean, it just kind of went from there. I mean, it was the band cycled through members a little bit, but the core guys were all, the guitar player who wrote most of the music, myself, and the bass player and the drummer were all grew up together basically from middle school up. So it was kind of that. And, you know, we spent, even before we played in a band, we spent a lot of time going through like Pit Magazine and all these other small zines trying to find, because again, we were in South Florida, but we weren't in Fort Lauderdale or Miami. So we were kind of divorced a little bit from like the main music scene. So we were scouring like liner notes and magazine ads to try and find new albums to order and things like that. So that was really the start of it, was us just trying to find new music. And then we started started playing. I don't remember exactly how that happened, but yeah.
Ed, when's the first time? Do you remember the first time you heard of Dark Faith?
We played shows with them in Contorted. I remember, I think it was Passive Possession. There was a show we booked on some fucking shithole club on Armenia, and it was Dark Faith, Passive Possession, and Contorted.
Huh.
And it was a long fucking time ago. And that was when early days of Contorted too. So that would have been around the same time you're talking about, 97, 98-ish maybe. But yeah, I mean, that was the first time I had, because I'd heard of them, but there were a couple bands from South Florida, you know, you heard of, but you didn't. Demos weren't really making it up to Tampa. Most, you know, you got them at the shows when people were handing them out. And then, of course, over time, bands started to intertwine members, and that's, you know, kind of how I started to. But I remember when we played, I thought you got, you know, Dark Faith I was like, wow, this is different, because there weren't a lot of bands back then. You know what I mean? It was like the big bands and not many local style bands, because it just, you know, because most bands were like, you know, as we know, Contorted broke off from Brutality. So unless you were a bigger band and then you dismembered and went into another band, you know, generally it was either a startup or, you know, you were an old band breaking away back then. Anyway,
That's funny. I never thought of it that way, but that was all the people I met early on, you, and then Mike Browning, and, you know, Richard with Pats and all that. Everyone was in other bands first.
Right. Yeah. I mean, because I can remember, you know, Richard and Aaron Fuller, all those dudes, you know, like, I'm like, wow, these guys are like, I saw you in another band way back. You know, I knew Richard, obviously. Anybody didn't know, Richard was in Morbid, you were kind of an idiot. But a lot of guys, you were just like, wait, didn't I see you a couple of years ago in another band? And, you know, you realize that that's what people did, because it just, you know, new bands. And that's how, I mean, at some point there were too many bands. I mean, you know, that as a booker, I mean, it was crazy. But yeah, back then there was only a handful of bands, and that's why you know, Heather would call up you guys or a couple other bands. You know, back then, Rape Tape, we had them on. Bands like that, Sacagawea from frickin' Jacksonville. You know, bands like that would come up and play, because there just wasn't. Otherwise, you'd see the same band over and over and over again.
I think that was kind of always a problem at some point, where it was, because I'm looking at, I mean, one of the things we have at the venue is we have this back wall where I've just we're wallpapering the back wall of the venue with old Florida flyers. So stuff from Orlando, but also stuff from Tampa and all that. And there's definitely a period.
Send us photos of that, Pete. Actually, we've had photos sent to us of the back wall at the Conduit.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, people seem to really like it, but we've been, I still have a ton of flyers we haven't put up. I mean, the whole wall is going to be covered, but Dave Allison gave me a bunch of stuff. A bunch of people kind of Orlando around Drag Body and Bloodlet and all that sent me a bunch of stuff, Scott White. And so it's been cool, but yeah, you see a lot of the same bands over and over again. But it was good. I mean, I think, you know, even because late 90s, early 2000s was arguably the low point in metal,
yeah,
in terms of like attendance and all this. But I think that, you know, at least from my perspective, you know, we were in a really good position where we got lucky on the timing, in the sense that when we first started playing Tampa, it was like the Brass Mug would be packed, not because we were playing, but just because it was Friday or Saturday. And that's kind of what they went there and whatever.
I want to say, Pete, that you guys played it was a crazy lineup. It was one of the worst shows at Venom that we had. It was like the attendance was, I don't know if you guys played the
Cattle Decapitation
and Christian show. I remember I was standing there and being like, what the fuck? I think there was 44 paid people, because I booked Dark Faith for that. And it was a weird show. And, you know, I mean, I'll never forget that show. I thought you guys were on that, because I still have the flyer for that. You know, but yeah, I never forget that. But with who came up with the name Dark Faith?
Well, before I forget, the flyer for that show's up at Conduit too.
Nice. I have one at the condo too, back in Florida.
Yeah. No, it was weird to see Hate Eternal, Christian, and Cattle in front of like 40 people or whatever.
And it was like, you think about it, what a cool setting it was too, because it was a little room. You could have saw them, but it was only 44 people there.
Dude, but seeing at Club Venom when you were doing stuff, seeing Deicide there was awesome. That was a phenomenal show. Didn't Contorted play that?
We did.
Yeah, I
We
thought
did.
so. Yeah. Yeah. I think we were either first or second, and then Contorted, and then Deicide. I think, right?
Unholy
Maybe
Yeah,
we
Ghost.
were
and
first.
Unholy Ghost played that show too. Yeah, that's right.
Oh, then we were definitely first. Okay.
We had, and I'll never forget that night because we had this little dog at the venue. Remember that Matt had this little dog, and I remember Glenn. We had to pay him before they played, and I just remember Glenn sitting there with the dog and like count, like real serious, counted the money. Once he got paid, was totally happy and nice. It was totally like a different, It was just seeing him with the little dog was a trip though. But yeah, that was crazy, crazy times. That was a good times though, and like you said, seeing Deicide. What the great thing about that show was, if you remember that stage, because that used to be a liquor packing store. The venue we had, there was a strip bar in the middle of the stage that held up the
Pole.
ceiling. Yeah, strip pole. And I just remember Glenn Benton playing, and there's like a strip pole like in front of him. It was pretty wild. But yeah, definitely. That was almost 20 years ago now, maybe more. But yeah, so Pete, who came up with the name and the logo for Dark Faith?
Our bass player did the logo, and actually Jack from Passive Possession kind of refined it like years later. We were trying to make merch or something. He kind of redrew it and fixed it. But I don't remember exactly who came up with it. It wasn't me. It was either the guitar player Kellen or the bass player. But it was just one of those. I mean, we were like 15-year-old kids in high school. It was like trying to come up with something like dark and evil or whatever. Probably would have picked something different if I was a little older. But yeah.
And what was the first official Dark Faith show?
Oh shit! Probably like playing someone's living room. We did, because again, there's no clubs where I grew up, so we did house shows for a little bit, and then we started renting out like VFWs or there's a Fort Pierce Vero Beach. There was kind of in the mid '90s a bit more of a strong punk scene. So there's this band Discount from Vero that did pretty well. It was like on the 403 Chaos comp that Steve from Massacre did. But yeah, we rented the Women's Club and the Heritage Center were these two venues that were like entertainment things that we rented and somehow cobbled together a PA. But we did tons of stuff. Monstrosity actually played there. God, when Jason was still in the band forever ago, must have been before In Dark Purity came out or right as it was coming out, something like that. But we did stuff with them. Confined from South Florida, like we would bring up like Hibernus Mortis or different stuff. Maybe Hibernus never played, but Confined, and we were trying to do Cult of Azazel stuff for a while, and we did a show with God, what's the name of that band from Boston with the guy? The Red Chord did something in like a warehouse with us. Like it kind of cobbled together random stuff, but shows are really good because there was nothing else to do. So it would do 400 or 500 people because there was just nowhere for anyone else to go who was like under 21. So
no internet, no all that bullshit,
yeah.
sucking people in. And you guys did you mentioned the demo earlier, the '98 demo. So that was what? Where'd you guys record that? It was 4 songs, right? You guys did the Sweet Leaf cover from Sabbath, and then 3 originals.
Yeah, there's a place. There was a kind of a punk indie band called Cup of Joe that was like kind of big in that small area. And this guy Joe Beatty, his brother, I think, ran the studio called Avalon. So we just did it in this small place. For most, we did that. And we did an album we scrapped afterwards because we kind of hated it. But everything else was in Tampa. We either recorded with Rutan's in Rutan studio, or we did with Punchy. And then the last stuff we did, Nick Goodyear did in our rehearsal space, because we took over Morbid Angel's spot, but we shared it with Passive Possession and then Precipice, I think, for a while. But yeah, the early one was just this random South Florida studio. So.
Well, I know you guys did what, the '99. You guys did the track on the what was it, the Bloody Knuckles comp, and then you guys did the which I know I was very familiar with because Splatter God actually carried it at his store. The record Splatter God did out. You guys did the 2000. What was it? The New Wave of Florida Heavy Metal Volume 1.
Oh yeah, what was
Grinder?
That sounds vaguely familiar, but I don't know.
Yeah, he did that, and then obviously you guys did the split too with Passive Possession, which. That's his first release, I think, on Splatter God.
Yeah, we did a handful. We never really like set out and did albums. We always do like 4-song EPs, and then we did a couple of those. I think we did we did 2, and then a third one for that split with Passive Possession. So we did one kind of at this random place. We did one at Rutan Studio, and then the split stuff at Rutan's. But we never really sat down to the full album. Even the album we put out on Deathgasm Records at the end was kind of like a compilation of 2 different sessions.
Yeah, because you guys did an EP prior to that one, right? Right before that?
Yeah. We just never, the thing with us is we never really, we were on Deathgasm Records towards the end, but almost everything else was self-released. We were on, for a little bit, we were on a label in Poland called Still Dead that put out like the Equinox record. They did a Vicium, which was Durkada, the band that broke off from Durkada. Did they do Contorted stuff, or were they doing Brutality or something?
They did. Yeah. They did the Contorted. That was Still Dead was a shit show.
Yeah. Well, right before they were supposed to put out the Dark Faith album, that guy just disappeared. So
yep,
that happened to Contorted too, Ed.
Yeah, we got lucky because he actually sent, he put it out, and we got it. Because we got lucky because a lot of people. Our artists, they always said they're waiting on the artwork, and our guy Tony Cole, who did the artwork, he was like, no, the artwork's there, and he called up and started busting the dude's balls, and because they weren't paying him, and apparently next thing you know, we get a couple boxes in the mail of the, a bunch of boxes of the CDs to sell, and I was like, holy shit. And yeah, that was lucky because after that, those dudes were like ghosts. They were gone. I mean, I have no idea what happened to those guys.
Yeah, I even asked a couple people, not just out of curiosity, when bands come over from Poland and no one knows. I mean, it's so long ago at this point that I don't think,
it's over. That guy's probably freaking in the ground somewhere. Who knows?
Although I still somewhere have the Contorted demo that like Jim had hand wrote the inside with like his phone number and everything.
Yeah, that was, oh my God, we didn't even make all that many of them. We did that at Dana's house, which is crazy.
Well, that's basically what we did too, though. We would be like, oh shit, we have a show. So we would like burn CDRs in a computer.
Yep.
It took 20 minutes a CD or some shit.
With some fake printed cover and just hand it out. Hey, it worked, man. Yeah. It was like, that was our tape trading, except people, we had moved on to CDs at that point.
I was pulling covers from like rotten.com back then because it was like 3 web pages you had. Like I was like just fucking putting the band name on it and hand them the worst recordings. If I could go back and grab all those recordings for people and burn them, I would. I always think about that. I'm like, but and you guys did Dark Faith, 2003. You guys did the Death Worship North American tour because you guys did what you guys did Mexico 4 times. Mexico and the States you guys toured around a few times.
No, we got really lucky because we had we'd played a bunch in Florida, and then actually our first tour was before that. The first tour we did 2 tours before that, I think. But our first tour was with opening for Monstrosity. We went out on the 2nd or 3rd run of that In Dark Purity album. Jason wasn't in the band anymore, but there was a guy, Big Ed, that used to book them, used to work from him from Alabama, who's sadly passed away a while ago. But he liked the band and really wanted us to do this run with Monstrosity, so he kind of tacked us on as like the first out of 4 bands. Like Bloodstained Dusk was on it. It was like a kind of at the time up and coming black metal band from Alabama, and then Under Threat, which were from Columbia. This band, but yeah, our first tour was like 4 weeks with them. Like went out to the West Coast and up, and then we just kind of started booking our own stuff. We went out with Scarabus from Texas. And then we kind of went out by ourselves. We were supposed to do a run with Crimson Massacre, and they ended up not being able to do it. And then we did some dates with MOD, and we did.
You guys played in Texas with Killswitch, Engage, and Cradle of Filth?
Oh, yeah. That was a weird. Yeah, we did. It was just one show, but it was in like a civic center or something. There was like 1,000 people there. It was crazy. But yeah, we had a date booked the same day as that show, and the promoter just put them together. Which is good because we would have got crushed, I think, on that if we had done our own show without that. So,
and you mentioned Crimson Massacre. You guys, so you got, obviously, we're going to mention that you were involved with them, but so you first got basically like acquainted with them. You guys they opened up for you for Dark Faith in New Orleans.
Yeah, we played in New Orleans, and then we went and stayed with them in Houston for 2 days and just like partied and played a show or something. And then we went home, we went on and toured, did the rest of the tour, went home. And the guys, Scott and James, were just hit me up and were like, "Hey, we're just trying to finish this album. Our singer can't really do it. You want to come out and do it?" And yeah, we kind of hit it off, and I ended up, I'm still talking to those guys, and we're quietly trying to finish an album right now, actually. But yeah, we just
when you were doing that record. I reviewed that record, if you remember, in the Rivet Rag. Even I remember sitting with you at the Venom nightclub and just talking about you were pretty damn excited too. I remember when that record was about to come out.
Well, it was kind of a crazy thing because the album, because I had heard the band live, but I wasn't super familiar. But I was like, oh, I'll give it a shot. We'll try it out. And when they sent me the demo stuff, it was just insane. Like I didn't realize how crazy the band was. So it was great. It was really challenging. And the album, I mean, honestly, I spent 8 or 10 years touring with Dark Faith and doing all kinds of stuff. And that One Crimson Massacre record has way more, like, to this day, I get hit up constantly by people about it. Or like we did an interview for some Italian magazine the other year on like the, 15-year anniversary of the record or something like that. So it's funny because that band gets way more attention than the thing that I toured with for fucking ever. So
and what were you doing? You were flying out to Texas to rehearse and record and stuff like that when you first got involved?
Yeah, and they would come down here because we had for a while Bill Taylor was gonna jump in, and then that didn't end up working out. And then Jesse Jolly played bass because the band didn't really have a bass player. They didn't really see the need for it, which was maybe interesting. But so they would kind of come to Florida, and we did a festival thing that Mike Fortier put on in Orlando with Despised Icon was the other headliner, and we did some Florida dates, some Texas stuff, but then the guys in that band just weren't really interested in doing a lot live. Like they would play, but they weren't really trying to tour. We got offered to do dates with, and I lost this argument, but we got offered to do dates with Demolic, which I was fucking stoked on, but the rest of the guys didn't care. So we didn't end up doing the tour. And yeah, we just kind of never, eventually like everyone kind of drifted away doing their own stuff. And now we're kind of slow. We had an album that was like 80% complete, like everything but edits and vocals were done. So I think we're trying to finish that right now to put it back out. So.
Yeah. And you mentioned the bass. So you had to have two guys split it up, right? You had James Jackson do the bass on the record and Bill Ledgerwood. Did you actually write the lyrics to that record?
No.
Did you have anything to do with the lyrics, or were they pre-written for you?
The drummer Scott wrote the lyrics. It's an interesting thing to step into to do vocals because they were, aside from doing the vocals, they were done. Like the lyrics were written. John Zig did the artwork. Like the whole thing was pretty much buttoned up. It was just they didn't like their singer and didn't think he could pull it off, and then asked me to do it. And it's a weird album. It was hard to do, but yeah.
John Zig's done a bunch of stuff now. He did stuff for Amputated artwork, Cystic Dysentery for people who in Florida, Deeds of Flesh,
Well, and Ben from Cystic has a new band now too, Parasite Disciple.
Yeah. I've listened to them actually. I've checked them out. And we're actually going to, so what we're going to do is we're actually going to play a Crimson Massacre tune here. We're going to play Devourer off the record we're talking about is The Luster of Pandemonium, which was 2005 that came out, right?
Yeah, I think we recorded and it came out the same year through Deathgasm.
Did you have anything to do with, there was a split before that. Were you on the split before that?
No, they were kind of, no, that was the original singer, and they were a little more black metal-ish at that point, and then they dropped all that and just kind of focused on doing death metal. So yeah, they did that split, which was I think about the time I heard of them, and then yeah.
Yeah, we're going to play right now. We're going to play the Devourer off of the Luster of Pandemonium album from 2005 off Deathgasm Records, and we'll be back on the Tampa Morgue right after this track. go. That was the Devourer off of the Lust of Pandemonium record from Crimson Massacre. How did Deathgasm treat that band? Did you guys feel like they like rep the band pretty good on that record?
No. I Evan from Deathgasm's a friend, so I'm not complaining. He was a great guy. Is a great guy. But and he later put out Dark Faith. There was kind of like he liked the albums, liked the bands, but it was like you put it out and see what happens. And the Crimson album sold pretty well out the gate, and he was just kind of like, wow, I should have done more. His words, not mine. Yeah, so we got offered interest from Willow Tip for the next one, but then again, we didn't finish it. So
Deathgasm, they purchased United Guttural off of Rich from Flesh Grind too back in the day.
Well, but Evan was big on, like, at the height of Deathgasm. I mean, he was putting out, Avulsion and Nomenon and like a ton of great stuff. But also he was a huge distro. I mean, we'd go to his house in Atlanta, like we played there or something and stayed at his house, and the amount of CDs that guy had in his basement was like, it was bigger than Ace's records. Easy example.
Did you how many shows did you wind up doing with Crimson Massacre? I know you said you didn't do many shows, but how much was there? Like, when that album came up, was there much like support of it after that?
No, I think we probably did 7 or 8 shows. It was about it. I mean, the thing is, the guys didn't really want to. The drummer was playing in another band called the John Bonet, which was like a hardcore band, and he toured a decent amount with them. And the guitar player just is not a people person, is the way I would put it. So he was not trying to tour and do a bunch of stuff. So it made it a little difficult. Even now, I mean, he has a couple other projects and working on the Crimson stuff, but playing live he likes it, but it just wasn't. They weren't super interested in getting in a van and touring and playing, because even though the band had a lot of interest, by a lot of interest in 2005, you mean we could do a tour in front of 20 people every night. Like, it wasn't he wasn't super interested in doing that. So,
and like you said, it was a weird time for that kind of music in general. I remember even booking at Venom, it was just, everything was hit or miss, and the guarantees were still high, but the crowds were not, I mean, and it was a risk, so I mean, especially even going back to the Venom nightclub, that was a big risk because we had no liquor. If you don't have a liquor license and you're selling beer and wine, it's a big problem. And, death metal bands are not cheap. And I mean, I booked Deicide, and I just remember, like, when I heard the price, I was like, holy shit, like, how much beer do we have to fucking sell? It's like,
well, and it was weird too, because I was saying when we started, it's like we would go to the Brass Mug and it would just be packed because that's what people did or whatever. But come, 2004, 2005, suddenly local shows were like 60 people. Just like bam, out of nowhere. So I don't.
You guys, Dark Faith wise, so we'll wrap up the Crimson Massacre. Did you know pretty much that, like, it was after you did that record and you did a few shows, did you kind of knew that it was pretty much not going to do anything for pretty much, I guess, not do anything for a while? Because I know you guys are working on shit now, but did you kind of get that?
Really. We were never that, like, explicitly goal driven. We were just in our early 20s, right? So it kept being like, oh, we should do this or we should do that, and we just never really. We would do interviews and stuff like that, but we would never, just kind of never got off the ground. We kept talking about it or this and that, but it was, we were on labels, but it was a small label. So it's kind of like the classic conundrum of, how do you get a booking agent? Well, be on a bigger label. It's like, well, how do you get on a bigger label? Well, you should have a booking agent. Like, okay, fuck it. So it was never, how to get from a band that people vaguely know into a bit more normal in the industry was it's still hard today, but at that point I had no idea what to do or how to do any of that. So
in 2000, you go to the Dark Faith wise, 2006, you guys do the Tainted Blood, which you recorded with Punchy at Diet of Worm Studios. And I remember 2006, you guys did the Toxic Holocaust show at the Mug, right, with Chaos and Blastmasters. It was 2006 or 2005. I want to say it was 2006.
Yeah, I've known Joel from Toxic Holocaust since then. He must have been like 16 or something at that point. Because Toxic Holocaust used to be like, even though everyone talks about them as like the big thrash band, right? The first 7-inch for them was black metal with a drum machine kind of thing. Yep. And then Joel switched over and did that Evil Never Dies album that was like, he was way ahead of the curve, right? Before people started doing retro thrash stuff, he was the first guy out there kind of doing old Creator, like Sodom sounding thrash metal.
And I've never seen them bad, dude. We've played with them, Ed, right? A couple times, probably like 2 or 3 times. Probably your shows, Pete. Some of those, but we played with them at the Morgue. We played them at downtown St. Petersburg at Local 662, I believe was the name. We played with them there. I've never seen that band have a bad show. Joel's, the guy's totally kills it. But you guys were doing, I mean, like I said, 2007, you guys did your first full length with, like you said, it was kind of a full length, but it was, if you take some of the stuff from the disc we just mentioned, the Tainted Blood, some of the material was on there already. And the artwork to that, who did the art? I do love the art, the cover to that album. Who did the artwork for that?
Oh, it's this guy in Florida who's went on and done a ton of other stuff. I can't remember his name, but he had, I don't even remember how we met up. He had kind of popped up out of nowhere. I think he's living in like Leesburg, Lake County, kind of middle of nowhere, Florida, and kind of had some artwork up and pretty great. So we wanted him to do a kind of Lovecraft, tentacles coming out of the back of the head kind of thing. So he was really good. He's went on to do a ton of stuff at this point. I think he makes a living off doing art, but
and were you doing all the lyrics for Dark Faith?
Yeah. It was kind of, the guitarist Kellen wrote 95% of the music, and then I wrote the lyrics, and that was kind of it.
You guys did the Amorphous cover on that record too, right?
Yeah, which is funny because Amorphous has a live in whatever town in Finland they're playing, but they're doing a live record. They just announced the other day that they started promoing, and the promo is the same cover we did, the Drown Maid song or whatever.
And you say for Dark Faith, you guys didn't have the goal of making it bigger, but were you guys like doing a lot of rehearsals, or was it kind of like
No, I mean, Crimson Massacre was a bit more disorganized. The Dark Faith stuff, we toured a lot, like in an attempt to like, we wanted to be a full-time band, but it was just.
Because I always thought you were man. That's one thing when I first started really talking to you, because you seemed very fucking driven and serious, man. Because I would always sit with you at the Venom nightclub up at that front desk, and and I knew you were like, Dark Faith was that was the thing. And I remember even back then, Pete, I remember me and you talking about booking shows.
Well, that was actually. So I went from the Dark Faith stuff was always not always, but I mean, we tried to be business oriented, but. When I'm 21, I don't know what the fuck that means. Sounds good though, but it was more like we just wanted to be a bigger band and tour, and we didn't catch on like that. Like at some point we toured so much, and it was just like, okay, we all have other stuff we're interested in doing. But when I moved to Tampa, like 2006, the show booking thing is how that came up, because I moved over, and Robin. Heather from the Brass Mug was talking to me about helping book nationals. So it's not like I wasn't trying to be a promoter. That wasn't, but, and then suddenly Robin had reached out to me because Cataclysm and, a couple other bands needed a show in Tampa and couldn't find a promoter, couldn't find anything. So
that was the Brass Mug, that show that was at, right?
Yeah. Okay. So that was like the first national I booked was Cataclysm, and like 2 other bands I can't remember.
So was that the first show you booked outside of Dark Faith, or a band that you had played in?
Yeah, 100%. I wasn't running around booking other shows I didn't have anything to do with. That was a kind of random thing where I moved to Tampa and they needed help doing this one Tampa show. And then from there, it just kind of got busier. And then we got a booking agent at one point, and he didn't have a promoter in Tampa that he worked with. So he started sending me bands. At the time, he was booking like, Watain and Zoroaster and all kinds of stuff. So I started, and because of him, other agents were like, oh, there's a new guy in Florida or something. So they started reaching out a little bit here and there. It's all a very progressive thing where, it scales up every year kind of thing. There wasn't like a goal or a plan. It was just kind of like, oh, it'd be cool to do more shows. And it was never like, oh, I'm going to do this for a living. That wasn't really, I mean, I was in grad school to get my degree. Like I wasn't even trying to do it for that. It just kind of ended up here.
Well, and with Dark Faith, you guys recorded your last thing in 2009. That was the Desecrated Silence. And did you kind of start getting the vibes? You said you moved to Tampa around 2006. Did you start getting the business vibe? Like, hey, I think I'm, and I know, so you people who don't know, like, it's pretty crazy. You went, so from 2001 to 2006, you attended UCF, right, for your BA. 2006, 2012, you got your doctor's in philosophy from USF. So during this whole time, you're in school. And first of all, when did the philosophy thing really kick in for you? That you actually found this interest, or it was just something you chose?
I was always interested, and I just kind of, we toured a lot during the summer and in the winter. So we were all in college. And we're not, well, yeah, most of us, I guess. And then it just kind of, I went and got a philosophy degree as an undergrad, which does pretty much nothing for you. So I decided to go get a PhD and teach. And I, not even intentionally, but I ended up at USF in Tampa, which worked out. I mean, I wanted to move over anyways, and it was starting to spend a lot of weekends in Tampa just to go to shows, or with Randy from Passive Possession. Like, we would go over and stay with him. But yeah, it just kind of happened. But then show booking was just kind of something on the side. But yeah, the band ended because everyone, towards the end of it, towards that last EP, like the guitarist who wrote most of the music, Kellen, he moved to Pittsburgh to go to grad school. So he ended up getting a theater design degree. So he does like set designs for movies and stuff, commercials or whatever. And people were just kind of, we toured so much and it wasn't really doing anything. Like, it wasn't opening up more opportunities for us. It was just like, oh, I'm going to be gone for 6 weeks and come back with $10 more than I left with, and fucking whatever, which is fine. We love doing it, but at some point we did one last tour after that EP came out with, like, we did a handful of dates with Revocation, like right when they signed to Relapse. We toured with Quay Vadis, like the Canadian like tech death metal band. But we did like 4 weeks, I think, or 3 weeks on the East Coast, like Maine and back, which is a lot just to do East Coast dates. And I remember we were driving from like fucking Buffalo to Philly or something, and just being in the van being like, yeah, I'm done. We're good. Let's just finish this tour. Like, everyone was pretty much done. You know what I mean? Like, it was a good experience, but at some point you're just tired of sleeping in a van. Although, like, one of the first national shows we ever opened was for Exhumed, like forever ago. And I remember Matt Harvey, who must have been really young at the time, talking to me. And I remember I must have been like 16 or something, being like, oh, I really want to tour in bands. Like, how do I do this or whatever? And Matt from Exhumed was like, remember, it's cool to be 25 sleeping in a van. It's not cool to be 35 sleeping in a van. And he's still fucking touring, sleeping in a van. So, I guess that didn't work out, but that always kind of burned into my head for some reason.
And you actually, you guys played, I was at the show. Dark Faith played their final show. Was that the December 23rd, 2011 show at the Mug?
Yeah, we did that in the day after we played in our hometown. But that was it. We got asked to do a reunion thing this last year, but turned it down. So I don't think, it's kind of, on the one hand, sometimes it's really cool, right? But on the other hand, it's like, how long do I got to play songs that we wrote in high school for? I'm 41, I want to call it a day on some of it. So everyone's kind of moved on.
From Dark Faith?
Huh?
You still talk to all the guys from Dark Faith?
Yeah. Everyone's on good terms. It's just, Nick Goodyear is probably the only guy who's still doing music actively. So everyone else, it's like, if you wanted them to get together and play a show, it'd be like having to relearn everything. Or like Kellen, the guitarist, hasn't played guitar probably in 3 years or something. So it's a bit much. And it's not like, there are different periods of time back in the day that we did really well. But if we did a reunion show now, there'd be like 40 people there. Like, it's not, the fans are not clamoring for a band they haven't heard of since 2008 or whatever.
Time goes so fast, man. Like, me and Ed, the last Generic Christ show we played was actually at the Haven, which we'll talk about the whole transformation.
Oh, yeah.
That was the last show, and that was 6 years ago. And like, Ed tells me, yes,
was that Passive Possession?
Pallbearer, Generic Christ, Dust Bolt, and there was Obituary.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was your show. We played your show there,
yeah.
And it was a killer show. That was the last show we played. I had no kids then. Now I have two, so it's changed a lot. But that, yeah. So, and and that's actually where it brings us to now, which is very cool. And I actually can't wait to talk to you about this, man, because I have seen you since the beginning, before you ever did any of this shit, and you've come such a fucking far way. So first of all, major props. We've mentioned you on the show before a few times, So, and a crazy thing is, so first of all, you were teaching. So you worked at what? You were teaching at Lakes 10 years at Lake
Oh,
Sumter State College?
well, in terms of show, I mean, I taught. I was tenured at Lake Sumter, which is like outside Orlando, basically. But I taught at UCF, and when I was in Tampa, I taught at the community college and at USF and all that stuff.
And then now you're done, man. Now you're just booking shows. You just left what last month or the month. I couldn't believe it. I was like, damn, man. I was like, when I saw the post, I was like, damn, Pete's done teaching.
This whole thing's kind of scaled up because I didn't really take seriously being a promoter as like a job until probably 2012. Like it was because I thought
Two Beards.
Huh?
Was that Two Beards? What was the name of your? Was that Two Beards? Was that the first one?
So I used to just do shows with the Brass Mug, and then I did Two Beards with this other guy. Is like a promotional company, and we book stuff. And then when I got my PhD, I just thought I was going to move somewhere for a job. I was kind of done. I was a little burned out on show booking at that point, and I was like, I don't want to. I'm whatever. I kind of had a falling out with the Brass Mug at that point. And then the Orpheum, when they were in Ybor, kind of came to me and said, hey, you should come book shows here. And I told the owner I kind of was burned out. I didn't really want to do it anymore. And he kind of was very, he's like, well, what do you not want to do? Come work for us and you don't have to do whatever that is. So they really helped me kind of learn to be a promoter in a more professional way and kind of pushed me. The Orpheum actually really pushed me to expand into Orlando and South Florida and all this. Because even when I started booking stuff with the Orpheum in Tampa, it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to book Orlando, I'm going to do all this other stuff. It was just, okay, well, I'll work for the Orpheum, I'll do these shows and whatever. So
how do you like the move now to the new Orpheum from Ybor?
I love it, but it's, the Ybor location had a lot of downsides Ybor was cool, but it's, you had to pay to park. It's fucking, could be difficult to deal with. It was a really old building, so it had its own problems, like all kinds of stuff. So the new place, the old place too only held 700 people. The new place outside does 1,000 because there's two stages. There's the outside and there's the inside. They've owned the building for 2 years now, I think, but they're still remodeling the whole room. So it's not even like they just put up they used to just have the stage out back, and now they just put up a whole steel building around the stage, and they have a new stage actually that's a lot bigger. So this isn't going to make sense to people listening to this, but it's like they're trying to make it a mini like Janus Live, which is this big, big outside venue.
Yeah, I've heard nothing. I've actually never been to it yet. Ed's been a few times. I have not been back in Florida since. But
Sounds killer. The sound there is great.
Yeah, they put a lot of money into making sure that outside setup is good. And the inside only holds 500 people, but they have the old Orpheum PA, so it's way fucking overpowered for like a smaller space. But
yeah, good. Vader was way loud.
Yeah,
way loud when Vader was in there. I was like, holy shit.
And Pete, how long did it take you to actually figure, like you said, you started promoting actually really 2012 as a business. Well, when did you actually start saying to yourself, okay, I got this shit figured out? Because there's a lot of things I'm going to ask you that you deal with that I've always wondered how you deal with it. And I've talked to you outside of the venues plenty of times while you're dealing with it. But when did you actually say to yourself, man, I could do this. Like I could make a living at this. And this is what I like to do.
Oh, those are really different questions all at once, I think, because I always like doing it. It's a little stressful, but it's always like doing it. And I think I found out that I really like the business side a bit more than the band side sometimes. You're never going to beat like being on stage and having a crowd, right? But seemed pretty good at the business thing as far as I could tell. But I never felt like I figured it out. I was just kind of like, I kept going and kept getting more opportunities with bigger bands and agents and at some point, maybe 6, 7 years ago, I realized that I'd kind of hit a bit of a ceiling with, doing stuff at Janus and being able to do shows with like 2,000 people, which is great. But in terms of metal, unless I'm going to try and book like Metallica, I'm kind of out of places to go. So I really started booking, pop music and country and like alternative bands and all this kind of stuff too. So that was probably the point where it took more of a professional turn. Because for a long time, I was just a metal promoter. I wasn't really trying to book other kinds of bands. And at some point, like from a business standpoint, you just run out of people to work with, which is maybe a good problem. But at some point, it's like, oh, I actually have to like expand out. And I've always listened to all kinds of music, but learn a lot more about other bands and all this kind of stuff.
Is there a certain kind of music that you dislike booking the most? Like as of like client, I'm trying to, and like I said, you can answer what you want. You don't have to answer. I don't want you anything to fuck what you do. But like, is there any kind of music where you're just like, man, I hate booking these kind of like? I know at Venom, I'll say this. I'm a big punk music fan, but I will say this: when we did the punk shows, nobody drank at the bar. We had a lot of problems outside the venue back then, fucking up the venue, pissing all over the buildings and stuff. So for me, it was like as much as I love that music, I knew that those shows were going to be a busy night. You know.
I wouldn't say there's anything I don't like. The one thing that's difficult is, or where we have the most problems, is actually like cover shows. Like some bands coming in covering something really mainstream, like Blink-182 or Green Day or something. Those are actually the worst because what you get are a bunch of people who don't normally go to shows, don't normally go out drinking. So they come out, they get hammered, and then they start almost getting a ton of fights because, like at a metal show, if you're standing there and someone bumps into you, you probably wouldn't even think about it. Just like, whatever, go back. But people don't normally go to concerts. They turn around and go, what the fuck? And like start trying to, so they just don't know how to handle themselves in that kind of environment. So it makes it way more difficult than any other, I booked Watain with them strewing dead animals and shit all over stage. That's way easier than the Blink-182 cover show. So,
what's the biggest show you've ever booked so far to this date?
Well, so the short answer I got. Well, there are a couple. I mean, anything that sold out Janus is kind of huge, right? So Sabaton sold out. Cannibal Corpse last time sold out. Lorna Shore sold out. Janus. I can go into slightly bigger venues, and actually, technically I'm allowed to do shows in the whatever it's called now, the Sundome or whatever, where Cannibal played the other night.
Yingling.
Yeah, Yingling. Yeah, I've had a meeting with them. It's just that's a very, very, very expensive venue to go into, so it makes it a little risky. But anything at Janus sold out's been 2,000 people, and that's pretty wild. I didn't really ever think I'd get to book because I love that venue, even though I own a room. That's my favorite venue in Florida, so I love doing shows there. I just had Periphery there last weekend, so.
And how hard is it to cut? So, like, when you deal with, is there a band, and like I said, you don't have to mention any of that, was there, like, a band that you've dealt with that was impossible? Or, I mean, have you ever dealt with bands where you're just like, I will never book this band again? Or it's just come down to business and money at the end of the day?
Besides Generic Christ.
Yeah, besides Generic Christ. That fucking bass player and that goddamn ego.
I don't know. The bands are usually easy to deal with. It's sometimes the staff the staff they have with them can be difficult. The bands themselves aren't usually anything. I haven't really had situations where I go, I'm never going to fucking book this band again. You have frustrating days, but I think there's always a bit of a degree of like, people are touring. You're living in a bus or in a van. You got to, as much as they can be really shitty sometimes, you have to give them a bit of a break because, maybe you don't want to be there that day. Maybe you fucking don't feel good. Maybe you would rather, who knows, right? So when people are in shitty moods, you try and ideally be a tad graceful about, maybe they're just having a shitty day or whatever. I don't really have any bands. I mean, I have bands that have been picky in like funny ways, but there aren't any bands that usually come in and cause this like massive issue or anything like that.
What's some of the strangest requests you guys get as like you said, demands? Like, you hear about the old, what was it? David Lee Roth, Eminem demand and stuff. You
don't really get strange requests that often. What really happens is like people get really, I wouldn't say demanding, but they want a lot. It's like when I booked Halloween, they was like every meal had to be catered. The guy that was our runner, he had to like spend all day from I think like 9 a.m. until about 1 a.m, just constantly making, I need you to go to Walmart and do this. I need you to do that. Like this long thing. There's some weird stuff too that isn't really like demanding, but people just get picky. So like I booked Michael Schenker at the Ritz, like it was probably like 2019 or something. And he had this 2x4 that he put under his cabinet, like the front of his cabinet to angle the cabinet a little bit upwards. And he'd been touring with that the same 2x4 for that whole tour. And I guess they left it in Atlanta. And sound check was like 6 hours because he was pissed that he couldn't get his amp to sound right. And it's like, because the 2x4 wasn't there. Yeah, just stuff like that. I mean, this is like weird little things. People get hung up on small details, but also Schenker was super nice. So probably, so that's funny. I've had like the opposite experience where you don't have a ton of people going, "Oh my God, this guy's a nightmare" or something. But I've been very lucky to have experiences with people who've been really nice, who didn't really need to be honest. I mean, last year we did 2 shows with Eric Melvin from NoFX, and
I saw that.
they were doing those the final
farewell
tour.
tour.
Yeah, he's doing solo dates, and he wanted to do like an after party thing, so we did 2 shows with him. And that guy is, he came a day early. He just hung out at the bar, like, and he's like coming in for sound check, texting me, being like, "Hey, does anyone working at the bar need coffee? We're gonna stop at Starbucks." Just like being kind of ridiculously nice, and he didn't have to do that. So that I think that's probably a more common experience than people coming in flipping out or anything. But
How about guest lists? How do you deal with that? With the, because I've known from booking that was always a thing. Like, so obviously when you deal with the Florida bands, you're probably getting handed a pretty huge guest list, but you're probably like, do you have a cutoff, or if you're dealing with some of the big boys, are you just like, I got to realize what I'm booking here and deal with it?
It depends on a couple different factors. I think Obituaries had the biggest one. I think we were at 70 something at one show. But it depends on what's going on at the show, though, right? Too. So if Obituary is playing, chances are it's sold out. So if they've already sold the show out, or if it's close to sell out or whatever, and they want 70 guests, who cares? Like, why does it matter? Like, everyone's kind of made their money, all this kind of stuff. Let them do what they want. It's their show, Usually, I mean, most of that stuff kind of easy to deal with because you have a contractually agreed to, like, you get 30 guests kind of thing. And then, but the right answer is that you be flexible, right? So the idea is that, okay, well, we agreed to 30, but if you need 36, I mean, that's, if the difference between me making and losing money is 6 people, then who cares? Like, doesn't really matter. Everyone gets hung up on this stuff, and it's just.
And like that actually happened because when we did the DTA tour, I was playing. I doubled up that night because you put Generic Christ on that show.
Right.
And then, of course, I was in Massacre. Well, I had told Eric Greif, who was the tour manager for DTA, I'm like, dude, I need VIP for my family. Like, they need to be able to walk in and no issues or whatever. And he's like, I don't know. The promoter's going to be, he's probably not going to be, be cool with that. And I'm like, I know the promoter. Tell him who it is. I don't think he's going to. And it was like an issue for like a week leading up to the show. And then when I got there, he handed me the passes like it was a headache. And I'm like, I was going to just contact you myself. And I was like, you know what? When I get there, I'll deal with it. Because I know you weren't going to not let my family in.
Well, Ed, I didn't want to bring this up, but Pete does have a bill for you for that show. And we just want to get a head count of how many people you actually got in that day.
Yeah. Well, I know there was at least 6. So you can send me the bill.
No, I think so much of that too is just learning to relax, which when you're dealing with, you owe this band X amount of money and stuff, it's kind of hard to do that. But over the years, hopefully you learn to kind of relax and go, it doesn't really matter and stuff. But
and Pete, who's the band? Oh, go ahead, finish.
Well, I was going to say that DTA show was rough though, because I was stoked to do that, but that was where Massacre like called it quits or whatever, right? So
that was a crazy day.
Yeah. Not fun to be in the venue when that argument was happening. It was like, this is the worst. Yeah, it's not.
Thank God I was home with my family. I missed it all.
That was the best part of that whole experience.
I just remember that day, like when we were all like, we were opening. I think I don't know if we played. I think we played first that night or second. But I remember like being there when all the bands were setting up, and I just remember the tension was like it was just it was not a fun day at the Orpheum that afternoon.
Yeah. When I showed up, it was like, guess what you missed, and I was like, fantastic. I mean, like, it's like we can't get along and it was a ticking time bomb, unfortunately. I mean, shit's obviously been rectified all this years later, but yeah, but I will tell you, that
hell of a night.
That fucking 35 minutes on stage, from the people I've talked to, they were like, that's the best I ever heard you. Yeah. Cause anger brings out some shit when you're playing, and but yeah, no, it was a great show. I was happy. I was lucky to do it twice. You know what I mean? I got to play 2 times, so that was fun.
I still want to see you with Monstrosity. I still haven't had a chance to do that.
So. Yeah, you should call Lee. Call Lee and make that happen because we played Tampa and Miami, and I keep telling him there's an awesome club up there in Orlando just calling our name.
I'll bug him because I talked to him not too long ago trying to get him, but scheduling or something couldn't do it. I think it was before maybe you guys went to South America or something like that.
See, what would be cool is we will have the guys in town because we're playing Texas and California in August and October. So, like a pre-festival warm-up show would be great practice. Lee.
Pete's writing that down right
I'm
now.
literally writing it down. Yeah, I'll hit up Lee when we get off thing. That's cool. I don't I'd love to see that. I was just telling someone I was just telling a promoter in Miami last night about how there are a handful of bands that I don't think got the credit they deserve, and Monstrosity was definitely one of them. So yeah, I would love to do it.
And Pete, who was the most so like out of all the shows you've booked that you thought were going to be killer? Because I've dealt with this myself back in the day. What was the show that just totally flopped that you were like, man, how because I don't know how exactly you've done this for a while, so obviously it's like an insurance thing. You expect there's going to be some shit that's going to flop. But what was a show that you were like, there's no way this is going to fail, and you're just like, wow?
A Both from Immortal. It's like the worst show. Lost a lot of money. But you're looking at it going, a Both first tour after he left Immortal, High on Fire. You're like, this thing's going to crush. And like, yeah, no. It was supposedly at the Ritz, which was the 1,500 capacity venue. We had to move it to the Orpheum, which is half the size of the Ritz. And even then it was like half of the Orpheum basically. So,
which is crazy because you just sold out the Conduit with High on Fire.
Yeah.
And you were putting out fucking messages. There are no more tickets. Like there are 0 tickets. Like that means 0.
Don't show up at the door. It was basically like I saw that message.
They do anyways though. So they got every time I say that, the first thing that happens is I get a DM or a message or whatever. Someone goes, I know you said it was sold out, but are there tickets at the door? I go, what show have you ever been to where that was the thing? I don't understand. But yeah.
And you mentioned the Conduit too. Let's talk about that definitely because we played last time I was there was the Haven. I know you played with Dark Faith. I swear I think I saw you guys with Equinox there years ago at the Haven.
Yeah. We opened for them once, I think.
Yeah, it was like them, Doom Witch maybe. But you guys, so for you're part owner. So I don't know exactly how this works, but first of all, like you said, I haven't been to the new venue, but I've seen photos. People have actually sent me because some just like generic ice flyers on the wall, which that's awesome, by the way. People send me photos of these things from there. Like, how did you make this decision to like, hey, I'm gonna take this a step further? I'm already booking shows. Now I want to run a venue.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was never like a plan. It was just the owner of the Haven was kind of over it and ready to retire and had been talking to me for a while. And I think I booked so many shows there. I mean, I was kind of the main person booking nationals in the room. So for her, it was just kind of her first choice. But it just seems like a logical extension of what I was doing otherwise. So kind of partnered up with the owner of Will's Pub and the owner of the Orpheum and bought the room and kind of gutted it and started over. Because the Haven was a great small venue, but there was smoking inside and it was more of a bar than a venue. So it was open all day. There's just like people in there all the time. And it made it.
There's no more smoke in there now?
No, yeah, no.
Nice.
Plus that bar in the middle was kind of a hindrance if you were in the back,
Well, so this got hard to describe, but like, so the bar was in the middle, which ruined kind of the whole room basically. But so I finally, when I bought it, I got the whole backstory, and I'll save you like the long ramble. But the reason why that is because it was a bunch of different venues before it was the Haven, and they kept expanding the room to like where the stage is and everything. So originally the bar was in the middle because the stage was just, how like there's that raised area that had couches and shit like in the back.
Yep.
That was originally the stage.
Right.
Like the room was like long instead of wide. So when it's set up like that, it would make sense. But it's not. Yeah, it was a nightmare otherwise.
It's kind of like the second Brass Mug, where if you were in the back and around that corner where they used to have the merch, you're like, I can hear you. Because I remember when Cannibal played and we walked back there to buy the merch because the bathrooms were back there, and you walk out and all of a sudden you're swallowed and you're like, all you can do is look through that little peephole and you could see the stage. And I'm like, this is terrible, man.
Well, I do think the original Brass Mug in Tampa, I loved that location.
Yes.
Even when they moved
so fucking good.
Even when they moved the stage to the back, because it made loading in and out easier, because before you had to walk through the crowd with all your gear.
Yeah.
right through the front fucking door, which was a pain in the ass, man. But
Yeah.
back when they put the stage in the back, it kind of made it more accessible. And it gave more room because remember in the beginning they used to have the little fucking benches. They had the whole area closed off to the room, and they had that long bench. Because I remember I launched off of there after somebody punched me in the face, and that was like
me.
No, it wasn't you. But I'm thinking when they opened that up, I was like, oh shit. And then when they moved the stage, I was like, okay, now this is killer because it's huge. I don't know why Heather didn't just make a bid for that, because the new one's cool. Don't get me wrong, but this is like, it's the original. And now what is it? A fucking some kind of tea place or something? I don't even know what it is. It's like,
and you guys know like all the shows of the original one that we used to all see. Like, I mean, back in the day, Christian. I mean, and I know they still play at the other venues, but there was just something special about that room.
And what's hilarious too, you think about how big some of these bands, Amon Amarth played there.
Yeah.
It was them, and I thought Diabolic was on it maybe, but Deicide and a couple other bands, because I remember Diabolic, Antar took forever to get his
set up the drums.
huge drum set.
Yeah, every time.
I did love the old original one. That's when I first moved to Florida. I started going to that place. And with the Conduit, so it's something I want to talk to you about, because obviously I've dealt with you plenty of times with this, and you were always cool, man. I've always said, like, like I said, I knew Pete before he was booking. Pete's booked my bands a bunch of times, Ed's bands a bunch of times. And Pete, you were nothing but honest and great, man. It was pretty much like, I felt like if you did your work for the show, you actually like promoted and did your shit, you pretty much can get out, work with Pete. But dealing with local bands, man, like we talked about, I forget who we talked about this with a couple weeks ago, but we talked about somebody else about this. Now, what would be, and we're all involved, but we've all been in local bands and stuff. But what are some of the things that drive you crazy dealing with the local band sometimes?
I don't think we have enough time for that. Yeah, I don't think anything drives me crazy. It's
egos.
One of the problems with the business a little bit, and there's no solution to this. It's just kind of the way it is that there's how the business works, like from I'm booking nationals and what that looks like. And then there's how local bands imagine it works, which is fairly disconnected from how anything else works. So a lot of times people, obviously you can learn how it works. It's not a crazy secret or anything, but a lot of times especially younger bands don't necessarily care to learn. They just make assumptions about what's going on, how it works, all this different stuff. So like, I'll give you a really good example about local band pay. So, I mainly, if not exclusively, book national tours. Like I don't really book local shows as a thing. But when it comes to national tours, if they want a local opener, which isn't my decision, right? So there are tons of tours that go, we don't want local openers, and then I get flack for it because people think I'm making some kind of decision. But the budget for what it is to pay a local band to play, like let's say, the Vader show in Tampa, there were 2 locals on it. The budget for paying them is negotiated 6 months before the show happens. Like not with the locals, but with the agent. It's slotted out going, we're going to dedicate $300 to paying 2 different local bands or whatever. So when it's, when it's over, understandably, if you're not familiar with how the business works, the local band looks at the room and goes, we're making $100, but the room's packed. It's like, well, right. But the headliner's making $6,000. And they only wanted to allocate $100 for the local band. So that's what the contract says. That's what so I think that's one of the bigger misunderstandings is people just don't know how the business works. So they assume that you have way more control than you actually do. Like, it's not like I book a band and I get to walk in and just do whatever I want. That's not really how this works. I have, just like everyone else in the world, right? I have people I answer to about what we agreed to and all this other stuff. So
I don't think a lot of people realize how much it costs to book some of these bands. I mean,
to feed them, to a lot of shit.
Well, and it's also it's you're paying the bands, but you also have to pay the venue and their staff. There's an advertising budget, so especially now more than obviously back in the day, I'm spending a lot of money on like Facebook ads or Instagram ads.
Are flyers done, man? Are paper flyers done? Do you think? Like,
I don't know if I'd say they're done, but it's I don't think it's the most effective way to promote what you're doing. So, I mean, what are you gonna? People just don't spend their time the way they used to. So, like, what am I gonna do? Go to the mall and pass out flyers? I mean, who's gonna be there that I'm trying to get? That I think they have a place when it comes to, like, if you want to stand outside a show and pass out flyers, I think that's effective. But you know, I think a lot of times when people worry about this stuff, the good question to ask is more, when was the last time someone handed you a flyer and then you went to that show, even though you had no idea about the bands? And I'm going to go ahead and guess the answer is never.
Yeah.
So it's a little weird to expect that handing out flyers for your local show is going to be the thing that gets people suddenly interested in your band, even though you would never just go to a show because someone handed you a flyer. So I think back in the day it was. I mean, there was tons of people that would come to shows just because they saw a flyer in a record store or whatever. But I think those days are unfortunately a bit gone at this point.
No, definitely. I think that too. And, you must have a pretty good. I remember the first time I booked shows, I was stuck with, I don't even know if I don't know if I should say the name on here, but I was booking through a guy who was not very friendly for booking shows through. And maybe I should just say his initials. I don't know if it's like a JF.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Like this guy, like I was so inexperienced, man. And like, I was talking to this dude and it was like talking to a fucking mafia guy. Like, and I'm sure I paid way too much for many shows, but I don't even think he's booking anymore. I don't believe, but
he's not.
Yeah, I think he's done booking. But for you, man, you probably have a pretty good relationship with all these people because you're pretty much, I think, in Florida, in our area of Florida. I'm going to say, what is that? The southeast area, like the whole area over there. You're pretty much the guy who the bands go through first to book. I think for them because you're booking Janus Landing, which to me has always personally, it's always been a dream to play that place as a local guy, even because it's just such a beautiful venue. You book, like Orlando, you pretty much got that circuit. And in Tampa, you even work with the Brass Mug now and stuff with some shows, right? You're pretty much.
Yeah.
You do.
Well, I do Miami too, and Jacksonville and Gainesville and all this other stuff. But, I mean, really the historical lineage of this stuff too is that even back in the day, I mean, going to the early 80s, it's funny because you see all these early obituary flyers and they're playing Janus. Like, even as like just after Executioner days, they're playing Janus through No Clubs, right? So Tony Refugiato from No Clubs is still booking shows. He's in his mid 70s, maybe.
But Tony's been there forever. I think he's the managed Atheist, even.
Yeah, he managed Atheist. Yeah. And he owned Daddy Cool Records, or owns Daddy Cool in St. Pete. So he's owned a record store for a long time. But him and this guy Fat Harry, who's a, let's say, less reputable promoter per se. Were kind of the guys who booked a lot of metal in Florida for the 70s and 80s. So I picked up way later. But yeah, I mean, just at this point, I mean, combination of having been around for so long and booking a lot of metal shows, I mean, you just kind of get this relationship with booking agents and bands. And, just kind of if you're doing it successfully, it just snowballs a little bit and gets you more and more opportunities.
I'm actually shocked that Obituary has never played Janus. Like I mean, now, because when they sell out every show in Tampa, like they did 3 shows in a row,
the Brass Mug, right?
At the Mug, and sold out every one of them. So it's
I think I can't speak. Obviously, I can't speak for those guys, but I think that they economically, when it comes to doing Tampa, they can make really good money by playing smaller rooms,
Right. That makes sense.
Especially if they're just going home each night instead of having to go out.
Right.
They have played Janus's Support. I know that, but yeah, they haven't headlined. They did one headline at the Orpheum years ago. But yeah, they tend to, Terry Butler explained this to me recently where they were talking about not Florida, but in England, they toured and they did a bunch of dates. Like normally people come in and they do London and, Sheffield or something and then whatever, move on. But they toured, I can't remember what it was. It was like 10 days or 2 weeks or something, which is uncommon. But that was the strategy, was to do these rooms and sell them out and have this great time and not worry about merch percentages or any of this kind of stuff. But they knew they could do the numbers, right? So it was a really smart move.
Yeah, they're good. They're really smart with business, it seems.
Yeah.
They picked the right stuff for sure.
And it's just, it's the best thing about all this. Not to harp on that show the other day, but it's like finally seeing bands like Obituary and Cannibal Corpse get get the recognition they're due in the U.S. to me is like an important and meaningful thing. That's why I was saying like the Red Rocks thing was so important, because it's like like you pointed out, in Europe they can play to crowds like this all the time, but these guys have deserved to play in front of these kind of crowds for the last 20 years, So it's great to see it.
They're only going to get bigger. I think these are going to be the bands in the next 10 years because, the time moves on, and eventually, as we know, people pass and bands pass. But Obituary, I think they're only going to get bigger. Them and the Cannibal Corpses, as long as they can keep on going, which, I'm sure another 10 years at least. I mean, it's just going to get bigger and bigger.
I think you're right, but I'm also a little biased where I think that, to be honest with you, I mean, obviously, we're Florida guys or whatever, so maybe this is someone will have a different opinion, but I think that you can't beat hearing Trevor's guitar tone live. You're not going to beat that. And I think Cannibal Corpse, even if you don't like death metal, you can't beat them as a live band. It's just so crushing. It's so fucking
and fucking Rattan now. I mean, and I love Pat too, but like you got Eric Rattan. I mean, the guy's a monster.
Well, and George is just he's a nut. I mean, he's just a thick-headed nut. So
yeah.
Well, yeah. So well, sorry, before I forget, but he's also, he's one of those death metal singers who's, you could pick him out of any lineup where, like one of the things that, like you listen to Slayer, when Tom Araya is singing, right? Because it's him. And George is one of those people that has this distinguishing voice where a lot of death metal bands, I think it's really hard to do that. You can find a million bands that sound like find a million bands whose vocals sound like Dying Fetus. Maybe not as good. I mean, obviously Dying Fetus is phenomenal, but you're not going to find a lot of bands that sound like George singing. It's pretty hard to replicate.
Right. Like John, like in my opinion, John's probably one of the best death metal singers because he's got a voice that can't be imitated. It just can't. He's just got a tone like Trevor's guitar. It's like the whole band almost is like so unique the way they crafted it, because it's just, I mean, dude, were you at the show, the Amon Amarth show?
I didn't get to go to that one.
So right before they came on, they do their little 70s, cocaine song. They always play it like at the beginning. And then all of a sudden out of nowhere comes this little bat signal thing on the fucking Sun Dome or the Youngling Center Dome. And it's Obituary in the bat signal. I'm like, of course you guys fucking did that, right? Nobody else thought of it all this time. And literally and Terry's like, dude, it's only like that big. And, but it's a light. And it was like the bat signal on the top of the dome. And all you see is pictures, people taking pictures of it going, okay. And I was like, well, fuck, man. You figured out another thing. Because they're like the koozies. Beer koozies. Everybody was like, "Oh,
everybody's got the Obituary hat now with the fucking camouflage." Everybody has this.
I mean, they branded themselves bigger than any other band. I mean, sure, Cannibal sells stuff and Deicide sells stuff. I'm not saying they don't, but I'm talking about branding, like camouflage. The redneck stomp, camouflage, Southern boy. That's who they are, and they don't. Dude, they're in the winter. When we toured with them, we'd be in fucking 0-degree weather, and they're walking around in shorts with a jacket. I never saw them in pants. I'm just like, that's fucking nuts.
I talk to people in Europe over here, and whenever we talk about Obituary, someone said to me one day, and it was the perfect, and I've said this to you, Ed, before. Someone's like, yeah, it's like the CCR of death metal. Barbecue music, like it's like the death metal barbecue music. And I totally understood what they were saying. I was like, yeah, when I hear Obituary, I'm thinking it's kind of like that, like, beer drinking, kind of thing going on. And it's amazing with them because we played with them at the Cuban Club on that Florida Metal Fest 2016, right, Ed? It was.
Yep.
And
they booked that.
Yeah, they booked that.
Yeah.
We played with them on that festival. It was like, with Trouble and Madball and all them. And I'll never forget, John Oliva joined Obituary on stage and sang. It was fucking awesome. And Malevolent Creation, last time we saw Hoffman actually play with them, and I'll never forget Trevor. They get done playing, and Trevor hops in the barbecue truck, pulls it over to the side, starts making barbecue sandwiches for everybody out in the parking lot. I mean, that's just...
Dude, they're 5 of the nicest dudes, behind the scene. I mean, I literally, I asked Terry, he was chatting with me on the way to the show, and I said, hey, man, let me know if I could say hey to you, be cool to say hey. Because, I obviously played in 2 bands with him. And he's like, cool, man. Yeah, hit me up. And then he hits me up as I'm pulling in the parking lot. Are you here? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, cool. I'm working on getting you some passes for after show. I was like, well, fuck, man. I was just wanting to say what's up. And next thing you know, go find Robin. Robin hands me 2 passes for me and my boy, and we're backstage in this room with, you talk about guests. Yeah. This room was flooded with the Florida peeps. I mean, everybody you can imagine. So yeah, I mean, they're really, and they walk in. I haven't seen them in months, and it's like they're the nicest people. You know what I mean? It's like crazy how.
That's why they keep on rolling, I think.
Well, that was the same thing with Terry with Left to Die. Like when they did that show in Orlando I think 2 years ago, year and a half, they it was definitely like a all Florida, like who's who of people who played, especially who played in Death, obviously, but yeah, it's pretty crazy to see that kind of stuff.
Who is some of your favorite bands to deal with, Pete, that you've dealt with on the bigger scale? Like, I know you just booked one band we were talking about before the show. Like, I'm a big Nunslaughter guy. We had Dawn of the Dead on this show. I know you just had them in Profanatica. So, yeah, who are some of your favorite bands to deal with that? When you see them, you look forward to them to coming into town? And
I mean, again, I'm kind of biased, but, Cannibal is always really great to deal with. I love talking to those guys. I've known them since I was 16, something like that. I mean, Obituary dudes are always great. I had a really great experience with Cynic, which I never got to book at all back in the day. So that was really kind of gratifying. I mean, there's a lot, man. A lot of these bands, especially in death metal, I've been working with since I was, like a fucking teenager, if not longer, in some capacity or another. So it's all good. I don't really have, I loved working with Exhumed and, Gruesome before that. So it's, working with Robin and Gus Rios, and everyone's been phenomenal. So it's really good. Oceans of Slumber is really fun. That's another band that I think they're not death metal, but don't get the credit they deserve. And Dauber, the drummer, was in Insect Warfare, which is a pretty fucking wild grindcore band from Texas. But yeah, I mean, I kind of, anything on the metal side, I'm always stoked on, really. So especially with the resurgence in death metal, because I'm always kind of like a death metal guy. And there's definitely a bit of a low point here and there, but right now it's just like I spend a lot of time listening to new music, and I can't really keep up with all the bands coming out, which is a great problem to have. But I end up not getting to spend as much time with any one album as I'd really like to. So it's like Slime Lord, like a new good record that just came out, fucking great, like mid-paced, like death or like death doom metal. But it's like I don't, how many times am I going to be able to listen to this before I got to move on to the next thing? It's great that there's so many bands, but it's a little hard to, I think, really spend a lot of time with any one album.
it's definitely an overload now.
Yeah.
And so what does a day, so you're booking a show or you're booking a big tour. What does your day look like? You got to get there. Are you there? Like, what is a day for Pete Olen mean when you got a big tour coming in? You're showing up at the venue, you're leaving at what time?
Well, if you're for really big shows like like Sold Out at Janus kind of thing, usually it's like you get in at 9 or 10 in the morning and you're there until 2 a.m. basically. So you get there, you get everything, get everyone on the same page. Usually, if you're doing this the right way, so to speak, you advance, you go through everything with a tour manager ahead of time. So by the time you get to the venue on the day of the show, there are no surprises. There's nothing to really, I mean, something always comes up, but there's nothing to work out. But really, as the promoter at that point, you're just there to make sure everything runs smoothly. I just have to kind of physically be there or be around. There's not really a lot to do until the end of the night when you're going over numbers and all that kind of stuff.
Did anybody ever trash your shit, like your dressing rooms or anything like that? Or is that pretty much you don't have to deal with that crap?
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't say anyone's trashed it, like destroyed stuff. I've had bands just like, leave every empty food box and all this shit thrown all over the place, but not really. I mean, people for the most part are pretty respectful. You don't really get people that are going to be a problem. I think I'm trying to think. I mean, even Watain, when they're throwing blood and fucking dead animal heads all over, they're very pleased and thank you. And I don't know, man. People.
So Eric's actually a really good guy. Pete, you probably know. I used to talk to you back in the day. I used to trade with Eric back before they actually got really popular. I have all their old the demo shit and stuff from him. But he's actually one of the nicest dudes when you actually meet him. I think so, at least.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, they're very. They've always been great, man. And You wouldn't think so because
Yeah.
of all the shit they do, but no, they've always been nothing but pro and great.
Do you ever get hassled by the people when they come in there? Like, hey, man, I don't want you to bring this, like, the fucking, back in the day, you'd have the churches or the picketers. Have you ever had dealt with this? Because it seems like a lost art maybe now.
No, I mean, in Orlando, we'll have religious people come hand out pamphlets sometimes, but I think that's just some random shit. I mean, the only time I've ever really had an issue was not this last time, but a couple of years ago when we booked Tier, we had PETA protesters because the guy, like, advocated for whale hunting because he comes from an indigenous population in the Faroe Islands or whatever. So we had PETA protesters, which was really weird. Whatever.
Well, with Tan, when they bring in their shit, what are they bringing in? Like, 'cause I remember when they first played at the Brass Mug. So this was like I know you remember this. This was like the old original Brass Mug.
That was my show. People were like throwing up outside and shit.
Before the stage was in the back, I believe, because they played up on the front stage. I recorded it on a videotape, and it stunk so bad. And now on this tour, Eric was telling me, I believe, that they were picking up Dead Roadkill for the show. But when they're coming to do a big show now, because I've seen them when you booked them at the Orpheum and shit. Are they just bringing in like heads of, like, was it sheep heads or whatever, and bags and stuff? And are they telling you first, like, hey, dude, just so you know, because it's pretty rancid up in front of that stage?
Well, I mean, I've worked with them for so long, I know what's coming, but they're very clear, both their agent and the band, that when you book them, this is what they're going to do. It's not like a surprise. So anyone who books that band and then is real against them bringing in dead animal heads or blood or something just is asleep at the wheel, right? I mean, they're not coy about it. When they're advancing, they have very explicit things about, this is our show and this is what we do and this is how we do it. So the Orpheum, independent of me, the owner of the Orpheum loves that band. So he always let them do whatever they wanted. We were one of the few US venues that would let them do flame inside, which is why they always had the candles and stuff lit. Because most people wouldn't let them do fire. But yeah, I mean, I just, people like that it's again, back in the day, it might be a little more of like an unplanned thing, but now no one would just show up and be like, oh yeah, by the way, we're going to spray blood all over the place. Like they definitely tell you ahead. You know what I mean?
Do you deal with any of the Antifa shit? 'Cause I know Destroyer 66 had problems in the States and stuff. And do you ever get contacted by any of them for your shows? Or, I know, like, there was a festival that was just canceled like 2 months ago, actually.
I wouldn't say that specific group contacts me. What happens is that, you just get emails every once in a while being like, how dare you book this band? Or someone calls me, a horrible person or something because I booked Mayhem. I think I got someone once called me and the Orpheum Nazis because we booked Mayhem, which was a confusing email to get. But I mean, there's always someone that's unhappy you're working with some band. We tend to just ignore it, to be honest with you. No one really, I don't know. It's just not, I think it's something where it's good to pay attention to what people think a little bit because, there are bands where you kind of would look at it and go, hey, we don't really want to work with people like this. This is not a good thing. But a lot of it's more noise than it is anything else, like people complaining about bands on shows they would never go to in the first place.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, whatever. And
what was it? Metal Threat that just got canceled, right?
What was it?
Chicago? Was it Metal Threat that just got canceled in Chicago?
What I guess I didn't hear
some
about
festival just got canceled, like I think because of Destroyer 666, I want to say, and maybe one more band. They actually
really?
Pulled that. Yeah, they actually moved it till next year, I guess, because they had to try to find a new venue or something.
Huh. I didn't realize okay, well, we've booked them a couple of times and never had any issues.
Well,
it was at the last shows you were.
Yeah, that's because it's not Florida.
Oh, yeah.
It's totally different.
They're the ones that allow like people to shut down streets. We don't allow that here.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a different experience here than other places for sure. So,
well, I know USF had that protest a couple weeks ago where, Chad Chronister shut it down. And I heard somebody talking at the thing said, what do you think that would work if they tried to do that, like protest this crowd? Oh. I don't, the metal crowd's not the one to probably pull that with, you know what I mean?
Yeah, when the PETA people were at the Tier show, it was just like, because the show was sold out. So there's like a line down the block to get in the venue and people are just making fun of them. It wasn't like no one cared that they were there. It's just like you're protesting this small melodic black metal band. What the fuck are you doing? Like this.
Yeah.
It was weird.
You know, and before I'm going to get to some shows you have coming up, and we'll let you get out of here. I know we've had you on for a while today, but how do you deal with security? Well, what I mean by that is, so I know at the Orpheum you had security guards you had to deal with. I haven't been in the Conduit, so I don't know how that runs yet when it comes to security. But do you actually tell, like, when you have big shows, how do you personally deal with security and say, hey, this is how I want you to treat the people, or how what you don't do, and where's the limit? Like, because people also could disrespect the security, so you have to kind of see that outside of it too as the promoter, I guess.
I mean, security. We have security at Conduit. I think it's, although there's still some small venues that don't have security. I think you're asking for a problem if you don't have people in place. Depending on the show, really depends on how much security there is and what the approach is. But honestly, again, to what I was saying earlier, like metal shows, you don't really have problems. Everyone knows how to handle themselves. People in the pit tend to police themselves. There's not usually a lot to do. You have security stand to the side. You have them keep an eye so that some small kid's not getting the shit kicked out of them. But that's such a rare occurrence, to be honest with you. I mean, I think all of us have probably seen, people fall in the pit and immediately someone picks them up and stuff. It's not really that bad. It's more like people who get too drunk having to kind of take them out of the equation a little bit. But everything with security is kind of with kid gloves. You don't want to, you want to de-escalate every situation. You're not trying to walk in and ratchet up the tension or have someone get in a fight. I mean, security guards, are getting paid, but they're still not really getting paid to get punched in the face. It's not a great experience, obviously. So yeah, you just work on de-escalating and stuff, but we really don't have a lot of problems, man. I mean, the Orpheum too, even as a bigger venue, we'll have stuff here and there, but it's really just trying to de-escalate it or not, just solve the problem and get everyone back to going to the show. It's kind of a silly place to get in fights, but alcohol probably doesn't help the general situation.
And I just saw, we'll get to some shows you have coming up, man, and we'll let you bail. I did see you have Joey Belladonna booked. You guys got him on August 18th. He's doing the Dio, Sabbath, and Rainbow. But what are some other shows that you have coming up that that people would? Because I know you have a bunch of stuff. I see you putting flyers up all the time, metal and not metal. So I mean, what do you have for the metal crowd that would?
Well, I mean, there's so much.
Angel.
We have Left to Die coming back in July. They're doing like a warm up show. There's a bunch of stuff later in the year. I have Morbid Angel in Tampa on that Devastation on the Nation package is crazy with Morbid Angel, Suffocation.
Oh,
yeah. We're working on, we haven't announced anything yet, but there's a final Sepultura tour that's happening that I'm really stoked to do in the fall. Man, I'm sure there's a million shows that I'm working on some solo stuff with Paul Masvidal. Like he's going to come do some Cynic and some other stuff. We just announced the Weekend Nachos dates, which is kind of crazy because they're a hardcore band I never really thought would get back together. There are a couple of hardcore shows we're working on too that aren't announced yet. Sick of It All and Strife and some other stuff that's kind of fucking cool to do. But I think I don't know. I mean, I'm at a point where I'm doing 400 or 500 shows a year, so it's a bit of a blur. Hopefully Monstrosity in August. There you go.
Hopefully. I want to play Orlando. It's been a while.
I think, and there's so much, it's funny too, because it's such a great time for you guys to come over, because there's so many younger bands right now, or younger and newer bands that are doing well. So like Virulence from Tampa is really fucking good.
They did the 2 shows in Miami and Tampa.
Oh shit. Okay. Yeah. I mean, Chris has been around forever, so they're a newer band, but he's not new. I mean, he played in
SWATs,
a bunch of different bands.
Some of the guys were in SWATs, right?
Yeah, but Mike was in SWATs, but then Chris was in he was in a band with Brian Warner before he was in Vital Remains, and I can't remember what it was called.
Infernion?
Yeah.
We Generic Christ played with them in Puerto Rico, actually, in Rotting Christ. Yep, over in San Juan. Yeah, that was when it was Werder, and then Taylor, who's in Deicide now, was playing with them at the time. It was definitely that was 2011, I think.
Taylor and Deicide, such a crazy move. Like he's
a hell of a player. I mean,
that's been so cool to see him. I mean, obviously Inhuman Condition is really good too, but seeing him in Deicide's fucking great to see. I mean, Kevin's been doing great for a long time, but it was a great addition.
Is there any other younger bands that you could recommend? Anybody who's listening? Because we have a lot of people from outside the country, out of the U.S. listening too, usually. So, is there any bands that you because you see these bands obviously,
Yeah,
or quite often.
I mean, there's a ton of good stuff locally in Florida. Pariah in Orlando, they're kind of like Vitriol, like in that like more technical death metal stuff. There's a Antagonizer out of Gainesville. They're kind of like that classic heavy metal like Metal Lucifer kind of stuff. Heavy metal chainsaw and all that stuff. Um, there's a ton of great stuff. Yeah, I think Pariah is my number one right now. Narcoozy is like a grind band out of Orlando that has Mike Fortier from Nail Shitter, a bunch of other guys. Man, Ed, I feel like you fucked me up today because now I just keep thinking about every band and everyone was in some other band. So
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time.
It's funny because when we were talking earlier, I said it, I can remember besides Generic Christ, and there was like Destined to Ruin, and there was like so many bands that you couldn't put them on all the shows, and everybody was giving you shit because it's like, bro, it's booked.
Look at Passive Possession, right? When it's like, say when Dark Fate did the split with them, you had Richard Burnell in that band.
George too, right?
Randy, Corpse Grinder, and Brian, like you mentioned earlier.
Well, it's funny too because I had a conversation. I should have mentioned this earlier, but I had a conversation with one of the tour manager from Watain one year, and he was asking me about all this Florida stuff, and he goes, "Where's Morris Sound and where whatever?" And then he asked me about Nasty Savage, and I was like, "Well, they're still around, but it's it's Ronnie and a couple other guys. It's not really like Ben Meyer or anyone." And
Dave's gone too now. We had Dave Austin on.
But so he was asking me who was in the band, and I mentioned like Jim playing drums, and he it's so funny to be outside of Florida because it was just this mind blowing. He's like, the guy from Brutality is playing drums in Nasty Savage. That's fucking crazy. And I was like, yeah, but I mean, who else was he going to get? Like on the one hand, it is crazy, but on the other hand, these are all the people who are around. So.
But Jim filled in many times over the years when Curtis couldn't. Like, when they went to Europe, I mean, Jim filled in here and there, so he was kind of like the obvious. But like the guitar players, where it's like how many people they've gone through. Now it seems like they got a solid lineup, but like, yeah, I actually saw Ben at the show the other day and was like, oh, shit, I haven't seen Ben Meyer because it's a name but aside from Nasty Savage and Gardy Lou, he does his solo stuff. So you don't really hear about Ben, unless you see a thing that he's playing. And I'm glad he's doing his own shit because he's a great guy. But, you're right. Everybody is in different bands. Everybody's in different bands.
Well, even I can't remember the band he was in originally, but now with Nasty Savage, they had Scott playing bass who was he toured with Death. Yeah, he never recorded with Death, but toured with them.
Yep, and then we brought him up the other day. He was originally from Fester. Yeah. So it's the old school bands, back in the day that all these bands that became other bands that became other bands. I mean, basically Contorted became Destined to Ruin. Oh, yeah. Well, but also you have I'm sure maybe you guys talked about this already, but Dave Allison and Trevor's website, the Tampa Museum of Metal stuff. Yeah.
You go, the way they have it set up is so crazy because you go by year. And they're like all these bands. I feel like I'm decently tapped in, and they're just all these bands I've never heard of. That maybe put out one demo in like '92 and then disappeared.
Yeah. It's crazy though. We had Rape Dave. We had Pooch on from Rape Dave like 3 weeks ago. I think it was 2 weeks ago. And man, I'm surprised the amount of attention his episode got. Like I expected it to be a decent one. I thought mostly Florida, right? I was thinking, okay, it'd be a Florida thing. I mean, all over. I mean, the downloads for Rape Ape is kind of crazy. And of course, Mike's an artist too, and he does a lot of other stuff besides that. But that was a band that was only around for a short period of time, really, if you think about it. Became Pain God eventually. But yeah, we had Pooch on here. It's just the scene is like I've not looked at that site, the Dave's site, the Tampa Bay Metal Museum. I know he's trying to do something actually with a location for that too. But I mean, the history is for me even moving there when I moved to Florida, which was like 95, end of 95, 96. Like even as a kid reading magazines and, listening to when I was first got into Deicide, like Tampa was like this place in Jersey that you looked at and said, man, I would love to go there one day. Unfortunately, when I got there, it was kind of slowing down a little bit for a couple of years, but it was still a killer.
Well, I didn't expect this to be such a obituary heavy interview, but like, that's the crazy thing about that obituary biography that came out, was it last year through Decibel or whatever? They did such a great job with that book. And I say this as someone who generally doesn't like music journalism. I feel like it's not really done super well, but Obituary and the guy they wrote that book with was phenomenal. Same thing with the Scott Burns book that came out, I think
Got it
this
right
year or
here
whatever.
somewhere. Yeah, it's a good book.
Yeah, the obituary one has like so many great references to stuff that was going on. And I love the history of this stuff, so I'm always.
That's what we're in. Me and Ed are really into. That's why we started this show. We kind of wanted to do different than other shows. We kind of wanted to focus on the history, even because for me and Ed being in Tampa for so long, we're not experts on anything. We just sat there and watched it. And from obviously, I worked for the Rivet Rag for a while, which actually Pete was on the cover of. Remember that? Pete was
remember.
on the cover of Rivet Rag.
What was the guy? I think he used to work for you at Venom, but he played in bands. That guy, his nickname was like Basshead or whatever.
Oh yeah, Basshead from Cacophony. Remember Cacophony? Yeah. It was like Lothax, Pazuzu.
Oh, the radio show. Yeah. He texted me once. This is a long time ago. And was like, "Hey man, you remember when you were on the cover of Rivet Rag?" And I was like, "Yeah, I guess." He's like, "Oh, I just did coke off your face, dude. It's fucking great." All right.
That's when you know you made it, when you're on Rivet Rag. we both made it, man.
Yeah, you were on there too, Ed. That's right. Yeah, no. And Pete, like I said, I've known you for a long time, man. I remember you before. I used to book. I'm so old that I used to book Pete before Pete started booking shows.
Yeah, I was not. Yeah, you did. I was not. I always just kind of booked my own band. I didn't really, again, it's turned into a thing years later, but it was.
How many shows did you do at Venom? You did what? 3 shows there? Probably 2 or 3, right?
Did that Deicide show. We did that Chrissy and Hate Eternal show. I think there was one more.
One more too.
You didn't play with Equinox there, did you?
Oh, I don't know.
I can't remember who the band we played with Equinox and Malevolent Creation. I can't remember who the other band was.
That venue was great. The problem with that venue and I still love the guys, but the people, the 2 dudes who bought it had no idea how to book shows. They even told me that. That's why I got thrown into the whole thing with the book and the shows thing. The problem is that it was a party there. It was a party till the sun came up. And the shows were over. We did let bands sleep there, though. We let touring bands sleep there if they needed, which was cool. But the problem you only you got beer and wine, but when everyone's drinking it for free, it's a big problem. And that's one thing that, killed us there. And, it was a while. That place was really insane. Like when the sun came up, there were still people walking out of there.
That was the, back in the 90s or whatever, the old brass mug thing where like bars closed at 3. So at 3, they would just lock the front door. Be like, all right, anyways, and just keep fucking going.
I think they still do that, maybe.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
I think we had the whole Hell on Earth. You remember that, Pete? We had the whole Hell on Earth experience there where they were trying to have a live suicide at our show, and all of a sudden, so we booked the show because we know it's bullshit. Like, we know it's total bullshit.
Aaron Fuller from Paths of Possession was playing drums.
He was the drummer.
He was, Yeah.
So he was on Bubba. We remember he called Bubba and was telling him he was going to kill, do the suicide thing or whatever.
Man, we had so many news people up in that place that whole week. And you know what the funny was? The show was, I'm just going to say it was not like I said, we knew it wasn't going to happen, but there was a lot of press for that whole thing.
That was the purpose.
Yeah, that was a whole thing for that. But yeah, man, Pete, again, man, we really appreciate you coming on. I wanted to get you on here for a while. And I think for me, there's a lot of questions I wanted to ask you just on the promoter side, which I've talked to you about before, but I thought it's a lot of people don't realize because a lot of people think that there's Pete Olen. He's the promoter. And for us guys like me and Ed, we know Pete way before that. Like, we know the 21-year-old Pete and all that. And I remember the Dark Faith days, and I've seen you guys plenty of times, booked you, and actually was at your last show. 2013, we said 2013 or 11.
Something like that.
Yeah. But, and I got to say, man, it's been a hell of a journey. You've made it really far, man. You really keep on progressing.
And you always took care of our bands, man. We never bugged you. You always, because you knew we would promote, and you always took care of us, man.
You guys had no offense to anything else or anyone else too, but it's so funny when you think about local bands. Like obviously, it's very important to promote and push stuff or whatever, but you really can't replace being good. Like you guys are both in a bunch of good bands over the years. So that's like step one is your band has to be good. And then
we had a following eventually. I think when Pete started booking, because at first it was rough the first couple of years, but when Pete started booking, we actually had a following. So that helped a lot,
Well, going back to even like, I never really booked Contorted and Destined to Ruin, but like playing shows, maybe put Destined to Ruin on some stuff.
Yeah, you did.
Did you book Possess? Who booked Possess, that Crowbar? Was that not you, Pete?
No, I think that was Crowbar directly.
Okay. That was
Yeah.
Tom then. Okay.
That was like the first time Possessed came down after they got back together or whatnot. But yeah. And that's another Florida guy, Dan Gonzalez, is in Possessed, and
Yeah.
He's a great guy.
He's badass. Killer.
Great. Fucking his from when he started with Nail Shitter forward, he's just such a. I really hope. I mean, obviously, Gruesome, Possessed, that's all good, but man, I'd love to see him get picked up in something even bigger if he could. So he toured with Master. He's done tons of stuff. It's crazy.
There's a lot of
Sepultura dudes.
Yeah.
The Cavalera.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he did do that run. That was a great show too. Watching Igor and.
Yeah, I saw that at MDF. They played Maryland, so I was like right there, side stage. It was great.
I'll tell you who killed Milwaukee this weekend. I saw is Hell Witch. I mean, I think they're such an underrated. I think Pat from Hell Witch is just awesome, and his vocals are killer. And we're fans of that band on this show. I think they're actually picking up a lot of steam, man.
Yeah, some of that stuff. I mean, them and Nunslaughter are good examples of bands that have been around a while and that suddenly seem to have like a second life. But Pat's another guy who, like, the amount of history that guy knows. Or like I don't know if he still does, but he used to have this like massive VHS collection.
Yeah, we had him on here.
We saw it.
Oh,
he was one of our first guests.
Yeah, so he's the reason. If you look at our logo, we actually have a Hell Witch patch on our logo's thing, and it's because he was our first guest. He was the first person to come on, and he had the whole. There was like, I mean, and it wrapped around the whole room, dude.
Yeah, he's crazy with that.
Did you have Mike Browning on yet?
No Browning yet. No, we will. That's definitely someone we want to get on. We haven't had Browning. We had Vincent Crowley. We had Snowy Shaw, which was great. Who else do we have, Ed? We've had David Austin from
Paul
Nasty
Speckman.
Savage, Paul Speckman from Master. We have Lee Payne coming on.
Bobby Gustafson.
Bobby G from Overkill.
Yeah, we've had some weird people. And
Art the Clown we had on. We had David Howard Thornton, who played Art the Clown. He was on for a couple hours one night. We got who else do we have? We have Lee Payne coming on from Clove and Hoof. Remember them?
Okay.
We had the guy from Brodequin.
Yeah,
we've had
How was that?
He was great, man. Very smart dude. Like,
dude,
super smart.
That new fucking album's insane.
Crazy, isn't it? Great guy too. Real intelligent dude.
Nice, down to earth. And you everybody we've talked to, it's amazing. When you talk to them like this, it's like.
We had Blaine Cook on he was great too, from the accused. And obviously, and so we actually haven't really targeted. Like, I know we're gonna get Terry on eventually. We haven't had many of the guys you would think. We haven't even asked them yet because we kind of started. Like, we did this show from the bottom up. We had no idea what the hell we were doing. We were playing songs at first to our cell phones, holding up to the microphones.
Oh my God, it was so.
We've come a
what
long
did
way.
We use? And we said ghetto. It was canceled. We're already canceled, so it was ghetto.
We
book now,
our guests
because
usually.
Yeah, so I basically just learned how to, because we've had guests tell us, we've had people message us after an episode, say, bro, you got to take that out. I didn't know I said that. I did not know I said that. You got to take that out. And I'm like, so luckily I learned how to edit and, do all the, add the songs and do all that crap. So it works out. With video, I don't know how that would work. That'd be a little harder to cut shit out. But yeah, this has been fun, man. I mean, it's kind of like what you're doing. You were originally doing it because you enjoyed it.
That's what we are.
That's what we do. We pay to do this. We don't make any money. We be paid for the services we have to use to do this shit. So it's just nice to talk to people, and hopefully 10 years, 20 years, people come on here and learn histories of people that did shit.
That's the main focus of our show, is to kind of go through the history of not only Florida, but just in general, like the liner notes. That's how we always look at it. We're like the stuff that when you sit around as a kid and read the record, you wonder that you don't know. We're not. A lot of the interviews, I listen to a lot of shit now, and you hear it's a lot of like, oh, who's your dream band to play with? It's just stuff that really is just the same question everywhere. So we kind of try to find a little bit of the history of the bands and stuff. And like I said, for you, I've said to myself, I said, man, a lot of people probably don't know what it's like to actually book the shows. They just see this guy they think is getting rich at the door, and they don't realize all the shit the guy's got to deal with all day. I realize it, of course. I've talked to you while you're doing it and stuff like that. So we really want to get you on. So, you could promote whatever here.
Well, I think it's cool too, because the history stuff, again, I mean, I know I said this was so important, and there's stuff too. Like, I was talking to Terry Butler the other week about, we're getting all these old flyers, and there's some stuff, especially with Death, because like Death, I didn't realize this, Death played Orlando a lot. Like, that was just kind of what Chuck did or whatever. But there's just this crazy shit where, like, I got a flyer for a show. It was like Death, Jenna Torturers, which is weird, but whatever. And then one other band. but it was like at the Rollins College Student Center. It's like, how the fuck did this happen? So I finally asked Harry, I'm like, why was this happening, or what the fuck? And I talked to what's his name? Oh my god, the other, not Trevor, but the other guy in Obituary playing guitar now.
Kenny.
Kenny. Oh my god, I can't believe I blanked on his name. But I asked Ken about it too, because Azrael is out there, the band he was playing before. I have a bunch of flyers with them on it with Bobby Coble and everything. But he was explaining that Jen used to be a DJ at Rollins College, I guess, for the college radio station. So they would occasionally do shows in the student center or whatever. But just crazy shit like that. It's like seeing these flyers, like, why the fuck was Death playing this college student center? But it's great.
Yeah, man. I got a lot of flyers for you too, man. When I get back to St. Pete at the condo, actually, I got a bunch of just stuff you booked, even that we weren't even on. That just I have a shitload of flyers, a bunch of old flyers from like actually Death and Cannibal and stuff too. I'll get you.
That's cool. Yeah, there's some.
A Tampa Morgue flyer too, man. We'll get one of those.
Oh, well, yeah, I'd love to put it up, and we have there's a bunch of some old Florida stuff. There's one in Miami at Camo Theater, which is where they filmed the Cannibal set for Ace Ventura and all that. It's still around actually, but it's more like a nightclub now. But there was some show there where it was like Agnostic Front, Malevolent Creation, Cannibal Corpse, and somebody. It was just like a crazy lineup. So, Obituary, that was the other one. Yeah.
Lineups were so different. Remember Kyle Thomas was telling us that the first X-Order show was with no effects?
Yeah, that was crazy.
Ever was with no effects. I mean, that's just, it goes to show you. Back then, they would put, be a mixture. I mean, now you get.
When were you talking about?
Doomsla.
Yeah.
So October or November.
So we should talk off.
Yeah.
But so actually, it's not announced yet, but X-Order's coming in October.
Really?
So that might be a good one to play then.
Okay, yeah, man. So what we'll do is, Pete, first of all, just so you know, you got it. Actually, I would like to work something out with you for like once a month. No charge. You come on here, mention some shows, have somebody or record something where you send it to us. We'll play it at the end of the show, announcing the shows you got going on at the Conduit.
Sure.
What's the address of the Conduit for those who don't know?
It's 6700 Aloma Avenue in Winter Park.
And Pete runs that place, and it's totally, like I said, I haven't been there yet, but I've actually been there when it was the Haven, played there, but I have not seen it since you've taken it over. I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, man, anything that you need promoted, just let us know. We actually do mention your shows all the time on here, but usually we just pull the shit off of the internet and check it out and see what's going on.
Well, especially when for this or any other episode, when you guys have something coming out, especially if you do a promo image, let me know. Like, I'm happy to put it up through the Endoxa stuff. I'm happy to like promote it through my personal ways or anything like that. Any way I can help, I'm down. So
thanks, awesome, man. And like I said, man, we've known you forever. You're a friend, and we appreciate everything. We appreciate you coming on here. And you got whoever, is there a site that people can go check out any shows they want to see that's coming?
It's just endoxabooking.com. ENDOXA is kind of a weird word I lifted out of Aristotle, but it's good.
There you go. Anything else, Pete, you want to mention?
That's it, man. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
No, we appreciate it, man. And we're going to say goodbye to you when we're playing the song. We're actually going to play. So I've kind of been digging back in, older, when I used to book shows like CDs and demos that we had gotten and just tapes. So I pulled this band out, and I'm sure, Pete, you remember them. They're from Fort Lauderdale, Brutal Mastication.
Yes, Brutal Chewing, yes.
Yes. So we're going to play a song for their 1996 demo. It's a song called Worms. They were formed in 1992. Out of Fort Lauderdale. They recorded this at Morrisound, actually. Recorded and mastered at Morrisound. It was re-released as part of their Underground CD. They put out a demo in 93, a demo in 96, an Underground live album in 2000, and then a full-length Rage Uncontrolled in 2003 on Hook 'em Mouth Records, which was at a Delray Beach. If you remember that label, they had like Cyst on there from West Palm, Slumlord, and Necromantic from Connecticut. But we're going to play the Brutal Mastication song, Worms, now. We're going to say goodbye to Pete while the song's playing. So, Pete, man, thanks again for coming on, dude. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Anything else, let me know.
Definitely, man. And for everybody else, we'll be back on the board for another 20 minutes with me and Ed after this song from Brutal Mastication. This song's called Worms off the 1996 demo. And we'll see you back on the Tampa Morgue after this track.
Swimming in the slime, right across the mist, feasting on the dead, let's proceed. Other friends me now, what's your mama accomplishment? Now I'm stripped of this, wish you couldn't see yourself lying on. Carpets on your cut, but stitch makes the gag. That's no seeds of blood. Gets you done on the ring. Flesh, eating at her chest. Things around me, that polluted air. Strange seeds. Saying at your knees, killing the safe. Sing your wrong, down your skull. Dying at your mouth. Fight to control. Lying in your casket, join the undead. Worms take control, claiming residence in your head. Seeds. Out of your cover, seems what they are. Can't see that nothing, go too far. Yeah.
And that was Brutal Mastication from Fort Lauderdale, formed in 1992, as we mentioned. And that was the song Worms from the 1996 demo, recorded and mastered at Moore's Sound. And that was Pete Olen, man. And that was like I said, me and Ed go way back with Pete. Been friends with the guy for years. Was definitely the smartest guy in the room tonight on the Tampa Morgue. The guy is so smart, man. He's actually had books published, I guess. I forgot to even mention that. The dude was a teacher. I mean, the guy's, I've known Pete forever, always been a stand-up guy, great guy. And
even, doing the shows with Dark Fate and Faith in the early days. And like I said, and we mentioned it, he's always, every time he put us on shows, he took care of us. He even paid us when we didn't expect anything. So, I almost said that, Ed, I didn't want to say that, we play for free, but I felt like back then that if you're playing these big shows, like the DTA Massacre show, which he did give us money for to play, which I was actually shocked at the end of it. The reason why is we were a local band at that time. I felt like just being on that bill with the bands that were on that bill was payment enough because, first of all, merchandise-wise, you're killing it. Like, we always killed it on merchandise on those shows. Right. But you're right, dude. Like, he would actually pay us, and I didn't try to act surprised, but I was like, damn, man. Like, Pete was fair. It was nice. It was nice to feel appreciated, even though you didn't, expect it. He always made sure to let you know that he appreciated, what we did, because we did promote the shit out of those shows. Every show we played, whether it's the Foo Bar, we made videos, posters. It was like a whole man. It was crazy shit we did, man. So. Yeah, no, props to him. Great interview, and he's a great dude, and I'm sure. I'm glad he came on because, like I said, I'm sure people, it's like they just see the guy booking the shows, and they're probably just like, this is the guy making all the money, not realizing. And we've known Pete since he was playing and before, it ain't like that. Pete's like,
he's been in the band. He's been,
Very calculated with how the
touring.
business works. So
Yeah. I mean, well, yeah, really liked having him on. We've been wanting to get him on for a while. I'm glad we had, a day to get him in. And yeah, anybody, Conduit, Pete's part owner of that place, definitely check it out in Orlando. And Ed, a couple things before we go here tonight, because we've been doing, I think this is like our 5th show in May, I believe.
I think so.
Yeah.
And we're not finished. We got one more.
Yeah, we have a guest announcement too, actually. We have Lee Payne from the old band Clove and Hoof coming on the 29th. A band that's been around for a long time. I think he formed that band in like 79, so
fucking crazy.
pack a sandwich for that episode.
I was fucking 8 years old. Holy shit.
We'll be here for like fucking 5 hours on that show, so get ready.
Lots of editing.
Bring your Gatorade. And and obviously Ed's going to Maryland Death Fest. He's playing Friday on the Power Stage, if I remember correctly from the last show.
Yep.
So fucking, you ready for that, man? It's gonna be a good time, dude.
Oh yeah, it will be. It's always a good time. Then we get to hang out Saturday and watch some killer music, so it'll be fun.
Yeah, it's gonna be killer. And we were talking a little bit with Pete about it too. Man, give us a little bit of so what was it, Saturday, right?
Yep.
My days are Saturday. You head up to the Yingling
Center, yeah.
Yingling
to
Center.
see Amon Amarth, and it was
How much you pay for parking? First of all, let's get to the gritty here.
Me, $0. I made Bryce drive, so he paid. I think it was $15.
$15. I figured 20, so I guess it's not as bad as I thought.
Yeah, no, it was $15, and we were parked. Literally, the door was a couple hundred feet away. It was close. We parked and then when we walked right to the door, the fucking seats were right there. Like, we didn't have to walk nowhere. It was like you can't. I will tell you, the merch line was fucking ridiculous, and when I saw the prices, I was like, "Fuck
yeah,
that."
Joe,
Fuck that.
Generic Christ, well, you did run into Generic Christ guitar player. You ran into the old Generic Christ guitar player too, guy. Everybody was there.
Yep. I saw a lot of people there that I know. Lee Harrison was there, my drummer. Yeah, a lot of people there, and then my old cohort in crime, Terry Butler, of course, left to die, Obituary, in Human Condition. Keep going. He's probably in 5 other bands. I don't remember. Yeah, he got me some
Hideous. You forgot
VIP.
Hideous too.
Yeah, well, I mean, right now.
Yeah.
He got me in some VIP tickets after they played to go backstage with Bryce, and that was something. I mean, there were so many people. I was just like, holy crap. So Pete's like, when you talk about 60, 70 guests, yep. Because Robin, when she came up to get us, she had a. I mean, you can't see it on because we don't do video, but they gave us these Viking, Amon Amarth Viking.
Oh, nice! I haven't seen that shit either.
Yeah, so they gave us that to wear to get.
And by Robin, you're speaking of Robin Mason.
Correct. Gruesome
and
Durketta. Yep. So she came up, got us, gave us the bands, took us downstairs, and and then from there we were able to actually go right on the floor because you have VIP because we were up in the seats. So we went out and watched Amon Amarth after we hung out with the Obi guys, and that was after Cannibal. We went downstairs, and then I saw a bunch of more faces, saw the Cannibal dudes, a couple of them afterwards. So yeah, it was really killer, man, and saw a lot of people I haven't seen in a long, long time. Some I wish I didn't, and then others that it was like, wow, it's been a long fucking time. And
did you buy one of those $50 T-shirts?
I did not. I kept the $50 right in my wallet.
Exactly. That's all because of the venue marking it up for that's nothing to do with the bands, I'm sure.
It's ridiculous, man. I mean, you want to support the bands, but come on, man. I mean, no offense, but the economy isn't exactly booming enough to be dropping $50-$60 on a shirt. But hey, more power to you if you can.
And that was your first time seeing Frozen Soul too, right? I still am not familiar with this band. So what did you think?
And they were good, man. I mean, they the singer was definitely making sure he screamed at the crowd to get moving, and they responded. So if you can get the crowd to respond, and I will tell you, they had a crowd. Like the floor by the time they were done was pretty packed, and a lot of the seats where we were sitting were packed. So they had a good response, and of course, I was surprised. What blew me away was the 10-minute changeover for Obituary.
Oh, wow.
They were on fucking stage in 10 minutes. I've never seen that.
That's fucking glorious.
And when they came out, they threw up this thing that I was mentioned earlier. It was their their logo, but it went on the dome and it looked like the bat signal. And as soon as that thing turned off, they came right out with Redneck Stomp, and it was so fucking heavy. And if you know Obituary, they do not disappoint. I'll tell you that right now. They do not disappoint. And what's crazy, they only played 30 minutes.
Has Redneck Stomp become their theme? Because I remember that. So I was at Morristown when they did the release party for that, for Frozen in Time record. And I remember when I first heard that, you just kind of had that thump to it.
The reason it is bands like to do songs like, Monstrosity does it, where they play a song that the vocals come in about a minute in, usually, right? Well, there's no vocals on Redneck Stomp. So they played probably half the song, and then they just played all new stuff. I think they played one older song.
I was going to ask, did they play anything? Was it all new or?
Yeah, all new except for one that was a little older. Nothing like chopped in half. None of that stuff.
Wow.
But it was because they only had 30 minutes, and they're doing a headlining run or something soon. Terry was telling me. So yeah, they only had that. I think Cannibal played 45 minutes, if I remember right. Their changeover was a little longer. Amon Amarth took forever to change over because they had the big Viking skull and these giant statues on stage. It was their show.
How were their performance?
It's Amon Amarth. I mean, I saw them open for Slayer, and it was killer. If you like Amon Amarth, they're killer. I mean, I was standing there talking to somebody who was absolutely shitting all over him, and I'm like kind of looking around the whole venue, going, yeah, well. I'm pretty sure they don't really give two fucks what you have to say, because the rest of these people are digging it. You know what I mean? So
I need to check out Frozen Soul, because I really haven't. I know they're like, I keep on hearing their name and they're on that tour and stuff. I mean, I met
the singer backstage. Dave, actually, it's funny. I walked up. I was getting ready to walk out to go watch him on Amarth, but Death Metal Dave had been walking around, and I walked over to say hey to him before I left, because I had, we had caught eye, but I didn't say hey, and I didn't want to be a dick. And I don't know if he was, he might have been drinking because he had a beer, but he was all like, oh, this is, introducing me to this dude. And I realized, oh, that's the singer for Frozen Soul. And, Dave always likes to go on a rant about me. I don't like it. You know how I feel. He's like, oh, just do play the blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, so what? This dude just fucking played in front of all these people. Like, really? Who am I compared to this dude who just played in front of all these fucking people?
You got a resume, man.
But, he just played in front of the Youngling Center. You know what I mean? He just got, you're touring with Obi and fucking Cannibal and Amon Amarth. That's pretty fucking, that tops my career. I ain't done that. So, but that's cool. I mean, it's cool. Yeah, I've done some shit, but no, overall, I give the show an A because it was fucking badass. And I am kind of, me and you kind of go, oh, it's Cannibal and Obi and they're our friends, but they crush. I mean, George walks out on stage and now he's got this presence where he almost walks out like he's fucking like, just fuck you. You know what I mean? He talks shit, and I love.
I remember seeing him with Passive Possession at the original Brass Mug. We always say there was 3 Brass Mugs. The original Brass Mug 1, when he walked up on there and up on stage, and I'll never forget. He looks at the crowd, and I think there was some guy that wandered in there, because if you remember, there was like kind of like a church building above the venue. There was like some kind of like religious thing. The guy walked in and started screaming something at George on the stage, I believe, and George is like, "This next song is called, fucking Bring Me the Head of Christ." Yeah, like I'll never forget that.
I remember that.
Yeah, that was probably like 20 something years ago now, but
he still does that. Like the other night, he goes, "This is our last song," and everybody's like, "Oh, boo!" And he's like, "Do you want to hear one more?" And he gets the crowd going. He goes, "Too bad, it's still our last fucking song." And I was just like, and then when he ended it, of course, he goes, "You guys want to hear another song? Fine, one more Sunday." Of course, because I should have known better, because they end with Hammer Smash Face, and I should have known that's not what played. But it's just, he does that. He fucks with the crowd, and I like it. It's good. It's what he does, man. George is a stand-up dude in life, and he's larger than life when he hits the stage. He's the man. Him and John Tardy, they know what they're doing. They're like 2 of the best frontmen out there. for death
I'll tell
metal.
you, I was a little, but when I saw you guys, I saw everybody I know at the concert, man. I have to admit, I was missing Florida a little bit. I was
Yeah.
like, man, and even Joe called me the next day and was like, dude, I wish you were there. I had that feeling, man. It was like, I knew you were going, and I was like, damn, man, I would love just to, because that is a reunion. Those kind of shows, as you know, Ed, anytime the obituaries, the cannibal corpses, you're going to see fucking everybody pretty much.
Well, this was, and some of them were out in full force. Like I'm in the bathroom taking a leak, and in comes Ben Meyer from Nasty Savage and Gardy Lou.
Imagine how many stories that dude has. We need to get
Oh
him
yeah,
on here.
well that's what I'm
Ben's
saying.
gotta-
It's like, and he's the one. Hey, dude, what's up, bro? And it's like, man, I know so many fucking of these. I don't want to call them old heads, but old heads. Like people I saw, like Bill Owen. Ran into Bill Owen. We had Bill Owen on the show.
Yeah, I talked to Bill like 2 weeks ago, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I've had ran into a bunch of people that I haven't seen, and it's like, man, it's cool, but then sometimes. Like I said, I don't want to bring it up here, but I had an encounter with a fucking asshole that I had no desire to ever see again. And and he didn't disappoint. He tried to come out of the gate with a fucking dig on me, and I fucking left him in a pile of rubbish. So sometimes it's not fun to run into people, but for the most part, the show was killer. All the people I saw, Jerry Mortallero, a lot of fucking people we know.
Diabolic.
It was killer.
Yeah, I mean, I just shake a lot of hands because I always think, if you shake a lot of hands at a concert,
you don't know how many dicks you're touching.
Yep. Because who's not washing their fucking hands in that
Honestly,
bathroom, man?
a lot of times now, people still doing the fist bump from COVID. I think that's how they do it. So that's good for me. Fist bump a lot of people.
If you shake like 30 hands in that place, you're probably at least
especially after I just come out of the bathroom. We're having fun. So
exactly.
But yeah, no, it was a good show. And then, like I said, I get 2 weeks of fun. Get to go to that show, get to go do my show, and it made me
get to hang out Saturday too, which is killer, man.
It made me, while sitting there watching them dudes, I got excited because I'm like, I get to do this next week on a little smaller stage, obviously, but it's still killer because there are people that are like, man, I wish I could play, Maryland. A lot of people still haven't. So
people are wanting Instagram lives. That I'm not going to lie to you, man. I've been getting some messages. People are, you're gonna have to do maybe one or two because people are bugging me about this. People want to see a couple Instagram lives from Maryland with you.
I'm working on it.
Some band guys.
Listen, when I went backstage, my first thought was I was gonna call you from the show, wake your ass up, and do one.
Hey, just let me know, man.
But it was so loud in there, it would have not worked.
Plus, man, you don't want to be like, at least if it's you're playing and you're doing it, it's probably you kind of want to just chill with your boy and hang out and do your thing. So I get it, man. And like I said, I was a little envious because I just missed everybody. I was like, man, I would have loved to have been there. I haven't seen these people in so long. And who knows? Talking to Pete, man, maybe we'll do a show or two, me and you there with
we got to do something because. As you know, and I know, life is very short, and I'll let you mention this, man, because it sucks, dude.
It's the thing is that we've seen we see it a lot, on social media and stuff like that, and we've
had a lot of personal people. I mean, I remember, and I bring this one up because I've known the guy for a long time, Ralph Santolo. I remember when he passed away. I was like, man, that was rough, for a lot of people because
it's crazy how long ago that was now too, Ed, if you think about it.
That's what I'm saying. And then, then you go down the list and all these people that we've known, you just go, man, then you start going, man, I'm going to be 53 in 2 weeks.
You old fucking bastard.
2.5 weeks, something like that.
We'll have to have a birthday party on here for you, man.
Yeah, no, I'm good. But it's just, I'm like, man, I'm going to be 53 years old. And then I see 53 years old,
John Wasowski. So we're going to talk about that Wasowski. And we see this a lot, like we're saying. We've seen a lot of people we're friends with or know lose their significant others, or people that we know, like we mentioned last episode, guys like Tom Riley, who was a regular at the venues we went to, who was killed. Ryan Bush, who passed away. There's a lot of people. Every year it's more and more and more. And we definitely want to send our thoughts out to someone that we've known forever. She's booked us on some of her shows before. We've been friends with her. Shannon Fox lost her, John, like I said, who was actually John passed away at 53. And John actually had a deep music history. I mean, John started out with he was the original
Drummer
founder,
for Stained.
Yeah, for Stained, 95 to 2011. Played with a band called, I think, Ladace Castle, or I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. But John passed away 2 days ago, and our thoughts are definitely with Shannon. Like I said, it's hard. We see it all the time. I see it so much now, like people we know losing people they care about. We've seen people that we know that for friends, who just pass away, like just different ways. It's just it's hard as you get older to see it because you're never going to see these people again. And our thoughts are definitely out with Shannon. So I know anybody from Tampa who knows us and knows the situation knows, it's definitely a sad moment in the area this week.
Absolutely.
And we're gonna we're gonna wrap up the show here in a couple minutes. I just want to mention the new releases this week, which is not many. We have, let me see here, May 24th, because that's the cycle pretty much, right? It's like Fridays. I think every album comes out now.
I think so.
Dope Throne with Broke Sabbath is coming out on Fearless Records. Dope Throne from Montreal. Evil Dead have Toxic Game coming out on Steamhammer SPV. I mean, it's funny. Evil Dead, there's like 6 different Evil Deads. How does this happen? Does anybody not check if there's another name? Because you have one from Brazil, one from Australia, one from Slovakia, one from Argentina, one from Germany. This one is the one from California that formed in 1987. But Toxic Game's coming out from Evil Dead. But Ed, did you ever wonder that? Like, how do people? There's like 17 of the same names.
I don't know. Even if you had a name for, I guess if somebody doesn't have the copyright, nowadays you could just snatch it up.
Yeah, but this is the Evil Dead from California. Toxic Grace on Steelhammer SPV. Rotting Christ has an album coming out on Seasons of Mist. Pro Exorcy, if I'm saying it right, coming out also on Friday. Film wise, not much going on, man. Like I did see the Strangers Chapter 1 is coming out. It actually came out on the 14th, I believe. And then that movie Sting also came out, which I believe is the one with I want to say it's the one with the spider. I have to double check, but I think so. It's that one, yeah. Besides that, man, you got Ed going to Maryland Death Fest. We already announced that we have Lee Payne from Club and Hoof coming on. June 15th, we have Bloody F Mess from Bloody Mess and the Scabs, which will be I guarantee you, will be a very interesting episode. The dude has played with everybody. We played with Gigi Allen. A lot of stories there. Just a lot of history. The guy's been around forever. Has a radio show called I think it's called I don't want to say this wrong, but I think it's called The School of Rock. I was actually on this show probably like 10 years ago. But yeah, we have, Ed, I really hope you have a blast this week, man. I'm sure you will. It's well-deserved, dude. Always proud of you, man. Killer. Looking forward to the new record coming up and whatever else we can announce monstrosity-wise. I think, you're going to have a blast, dude.
And we hopefully we will have some Instagram lives. Even if it's just me and you, just walking around and fucking,
I'm down, man. I'll wake up for you. Just let me know. Me and Ed are on a 7-hour difference right now. Me being in Lithuania and him being in Tampa. He'll be in Maryland, which I think is still 7 hours.
Same time zone.
Same deal. So, dude, have a blast, man. Thanks, Pete Olen, for hanging out today, man. It was great seeing you again, first of all. It's been forever.
Yes.
Great catching up. Looking forward to getting back to Florida for a little bit and hanging out, and a lot to catch up on outside of the show. Anything else, Ed?
I think that's it.
You got your leather pants ready for Friday?
My leather chaps. I wear them reverse, especially on the big stage.
Bandana ready to go. Bandana's hanging off the microphone stand. Monstrosity 950 on the power stage. The fact that I remembered that 650. Never mind. I was gonna say the fact that I remembered that it's fucking.
You had the 50 right. 650.
That's why you don't smoke pot, kids.
Yes.
But yeah,
I don't.
Exactly. But thanks to everybody who checks out the Tampa Morgue. We appreciate it. Like I said, man, we got new listeners all the time. We got Philippines now. We got Argentina. It's crazy. Vietnam, of course, a bunch of different places. Of course, in the States, we have a bunch of people in Florida. We appreciate everybody in Florida who listens. Any requests for guests, send them in. We can always see what we can do. It's definitely a possibility. And also, if you got anybody who wants to send in any tracks, any bands, we're not saying we're going to play it, but if we dig it, we'll play it. And contact us on Instagram, thetampamorgue@gmail.com. Ed, where can they find us stream-wise?
Spotify, YouTube, Apple, anywhere there's podcasts. Just type us in, you'll find us.
There you go. Ed, Monstrosity, 650 on the Power Stage at Maryland Death Fest on Friday. Tampa Morgue, wherever it streams. Check us out. There's 45 episodes there for you now to check out. And we got a bunch more coming. So, everyone, thank you for supporting the Tampa Morgue. Thanks for listening. We do appreciate it, and we're just building it as we go. So, everyone, check out The Conduit. Pete Olen, thanks, man, again for coming on. This is the Tampa Morgue. Ed, have a killer week, dude.
Thank you, sir.
Everyone, peace. See you next time on the Tampa Morgue.
See ya.